My name is Ed Nardi, Chair of the Natural Resources Commission, and I am calling this public meeting to order at 7 p.m. Tonight's NRC meeting will be a hybrid in-person and Zoom meeting. We have a microphone set up on the commission table, and plans will be projected through the TV monitor. If you are presenting via Zoom, please turn on your audio and microphone when it is time for you to speak. Following the presentation by the petitioner and questions from the commission, members of the public will have the opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment. Please identify yourself with name and address for the record. You can also raise your hand from your phone by dialing *9 and use *6 to unmute. All video screens will be turned off with the exception of any commissioners attending virtually and the current petitioner. Once the commission has acted on an application, the petitioner is free to leave the meeting. In the event of any technical difficulties, all matters on the agenda that have not been heard will be automatically continued to the March 20th meeting. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. At this time, I would ask the commissioners to introduce themselves. Sarah?
Grimwood.
Gary?
Gary Kleiman.
Bill?
Bill Kameza.
Nick?
Nick Pappas.
Thank you all. All right, with that, the first item on the agenda this evening is our public comment period. It's limited to 10 minutes with 2 minutes allocated per speaker. And the public comments are limited to items that are not on the agenda this evening. Delia, as you look across the Zoom, since everybody is virtual this evening by way of audience.
I don't see any hands up.
All right. Next item on the agenda is commissioner comments. Any of the commissioners have any comments this evening?
None for me.
No.
All set? Okay, thank you, guys. Delia, director's update.
What about the meeting?
Thank you, Sarah. I'm jumping over approval of meeting minutes for December 27th, 2023 and January 10th, 2024. I had no comments. I thought they were excellent.
I thought December 27th was great. January 10th, I wasn't here, so
You're gonna abstain from that one?
Yep.
Okay. Gary, Bill, Nick, any comments on the
Nothing.
minutes?
They look good.
So I'll move that we accept the minutes from December 27th, 2023 and January 10th, 2024.
Second?
Second, okay. And we understand, Sarah, if you do vote, you'll be voting on just the 27th. Okay, and we'll take the vote. Sarah,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
and I am an aye as well. All right. I think we have one continuous this evening.
Director's update?
Director's update.
Well, you can do the continuance. Okay.
We'll do the continuance. I will come back.
Sorry.
I've got it totally out of order. I might as well keep going.
Right.
All right. Gary, you want to do a continuance?
Sure, this is for,
Labadini.
yeah. So I move that we continue without discussion, 154 Southfield Road, DEP file number 1371641 to our March 20th, 24 meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Sarah. And we'll take the vote. Sarah?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. And now back to the director's update.
So this Friday is the League of Women Voters First Friday presentation, and they are hosting what's happening with MCI Concord. It will be held between 10 and 11:30 a.m. at Concord Free Public Library here at the main branch in the Goodwin Forum, as well as by Zoom. And it is an update on the status of the MCI Concord Prison and Concord's considerations in acquiring the property. Megan Zuluto, the Concord Deputy Town Manager, will be speaking along with Senator Mike Barrett, Representative Simon Cataldo, and Lee Smith, who is Chair of the Concord Housing Development Corporation. So if you are able to attend, I think that will be an informative discussion.
Would be.
We're continuing to work on the Wetlands Protection Act regulatory changes. That deadline was extended to April 30th. So that's good because there's a lot of review that needs to happen with that. So we're working with subgroups to provide comments to DEP on that. And the Warner's Pond Task Force will hold its second meeting tomorrow at 5 p.m. at Harvey Wheeler, as well as on Zoom. And I believe that Karen sent you the agenda
Yeah.
link for that
Thank you.
today.
Yeah.
That's it for me.
Thank you, Delia.
Mhm.
All right, with that, we will move on to our first continuance of the evening. This is a notice of intent, 166 Commonwealth Ave. DEP file 137-1643. And do we have John with us this evening?
Yes, good evening, John Rockwood from Ecotech.
Good evening, John.
Good evening. Basically, since the last meeting, we provided revised plans that addressed the peer review comments and the commission's comments from the prior hearing. And the planning board had another meeting on this, and I guess there's a couple of tweaks that are required to the landscaping plan and maybe a couple other minor tweaks to the civil plans. So just going to keep this brief with you guys tonight because you're probably going to want to continue until after planning board. I guess their meeting is like April 2nd. So
Yeah,
review-
that sounds right, John, and yeah,
And I
So we-
presume that the comments that, or the responses that you had to the peer review comments are being reviewed now by the third-party reviewer, and so we would want to wait until we see those as well, which I'm sure will be in time for the next meeting. So our next meeting is March 20th, but you probably will want to continue to the one beyond that, and I can
yeah,
give
we
you.
continue to April 10th, I believe.
Yeah.
That gives the planning board a chance to deal with it, gives us a chance to get the revised materials to you guys in a proper time frame. Basically, the plans really haven't changed too much from a commission's perspective since September. And basically, the only real thing that's happened is there's been some tweaks to the subsurface system that's almost near the 200-foot riverfront area boundary. And we now show an orange construction fence about 15 feet off the retaining wall. And we
Yeah.
added a note relative to that. That's what one of the commission's concerns. And there's also a note that's been on a couple of revisions at this point about making sure there's a 6-inch reveal of the top of the retaining wall against the river. So both of those are noted on the plan, and there's a construction fence shown on the plan that will be up, except when the work on the pathway there is being conducted, so that, because it sort of crosses the pathway.
sure.
It's
Yeah.
really intended for the major construction activities on the site. The landscaping work on the site is, relatively minor with smaller equipment. We're not going to have something digging foundations or taking a foundation out of the ground down in there, but a small excavator to install trees or whatever, or small equipment to install the walkway. And on the last revision, the compensatory storage calculations were revised to more accurately reflect per the peer reviewer what is actually being filled and what is actually being provided. So, so again, we're here tonight just to, we provided the plans. We decided we'd come to the meeting tonight rather than just continue it without coming. See if there's any additional comments from the commission that we need to consider for what we hope is the final version of the plans. You guys have seen 4 versions of the plan so far. So with that, I'll let the commission see if there's any questions or any additional comments that they would like to be seen.
Thank you, John. And I appreciate you putting that 15-foot demarcation fence up. I think that's an appropriate move just to protect the retaining wall, if you will, with heavy equipment, et cetera. So thanks for that.
Yep, no problem.
I didn't have any further thoughts or questions.
No, there's not.
Anybody on the commission?
No.
Good, Gary? Nick, you good?
Nothing. No questions.
Okay. Well, thank you, John. I appreciate you coming to the meeting tonight, giving us an update of kind of where you sit with the other commissions and boards as well. And I guess we'll look forward to seeing you back in April.
Yeah, April 10th.
Yeah.
And
We'll hold you for that date.
the filing deadline, the material submittal deadline is the 29th of March for that. Is that correct?
So it's essentially a week and a half before that. That sounds like that's the right
That's
date.
about
Yeah.
right, yep.
Yeah.
It's the Friday of the week before the week before.
That is correct.
Yep.
Yep, you got it.
Okay,
Thank you, John. Have a nice
Okay.
evening.
you too. Thank you.
Oh, no, John, why don't you hang on one sec? And before we leave, any public comment regarding this application? Not seeing any? Okay,
Now you just need
Thank
to
you,
vote to
John.
continue us.
now consider yourself continued.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
All right, our next continuance this evening is a notice of intent for New England Deaconess Association, DP file 137-1659. And do we have David and Bill out there?
Hello,
Hello. Name and address for the record, please.
David Cameron, Fleetwood Environmental Solutions LLC, 84 Russell Street in Hadley.
Good evening, David.
Good evening. It's nice to see everybody again.
Bill Giesententer, Massachusetts Audubon Society, South Great Road, Lincoln, Massachusetts.
Evening, Bill.
Evening.
Glad you could join us. All right, are you gonna, Bill or David, are you gonna walk us through kind of, the updates based on the last time we saw you and some of the adjustments you made to the plan?
Certainly, I can take the lead on that, and the rest of my team is here. They can help out as needed. In addition to Bill, Amy Capofretti is here from New England Deacon Association, and Greg Hockmith from Epsilon Associates. So I believe the way we left things at the end of December, after that first public meeting, is there were 5 major things that the commission were looking for in terms of additional information and questions to be answered. The first suggestion was that we try to realign the boardwalk and get it out of the bordering vegetated wetlands as much as we could. The second was to expand the narrative on avoidance and minimization measures, as well as what we envision the construction methods would be to actually install the boardwalk. The third request was to have a site plan prepared with more detail, including one that was signed and stamped by a professional land surveyor. The fourth was to depict anticipated staging areas and storage areas for equipment as the project was being constructed. And the fifth was to depict areas of replication or mitigation as needed. So we submitted a package to the commission, I guess it would have been a week ago last Friday, with additional information. And we subsequently submitted a revised impact table because we had some AutoCAD digitation issues on our end. So we submitted those new data, I believe, yesterday. So I can walk through what we've done in terms of those 5 items the commission wanted information on, and if there are ask any questions at any time you want, and I'm sure we can do our best to answer them. So the first thing, and probably the most prominent thing, is we realigned the boardwalk. Bill and Greg.
Do we want to get
Yeah, are you gonna share plans,
Do you-
David, or do you want me to pull those up?
I can try. I had a problem trying to share my screen this morning. I have all those things open, but if you have the stuff there at your fingertips, Delia, that might be helpful if you could pull up the proposed conditions plan.
Dave, I have them as well if we need them.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Greg, I think it's easier if the applicant, what you guys want to be sharing and showing,
Sure.
so. If I have them available if you're having difficulty. just let me
Sure.
know.
Dave, would you like me to pull up the stamped existing conditions plan from Niche first, just to show those 4 sheets and the survey that was done?
I guess it depends on if the commission wants to see the existing conditions plan or if they're more interested in seeing the new boardwalk alignment.
What?
I think a new boardwalk, don't you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I think we got a sense of the existing conditions before.
Yep. All right, great. Let me share that. So this plan that you see here was a result of that existing conditions plan that Niche prepared. So this is just an exhibit plan from that stamped survey plan showing the boardwalk layout.
Thank you.
Better?
Yeah,
Greg, can you make it a little larger by any chance? I know it's still on the screen now, but I can't quite read the.
Yeah, so it's, I'm gonna zoom in and maybe we can just kind of
All right,
go,
okay.
there you
through
go.
it.
That's great.
Wanna start here, Dave, or?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not seeing the color coding for the different resource areas on this one, like we showed this morning. We can talk through it anyway. It's not a big
Okay,
deal,
let
but
me, let's do this one here.
oh, there you go. Perfect. That's the one. Okay. So this would be the western portion of the proposed boardwalk loop. The areas that are shaded in green are areas that are in bordering vegetated wetlands. And then Greg, if you want to scroll to the east a little bit.
Sure. So this is heading towards the Sudbury River.
Right. And so that solid blue line at the 120-foot contour elevation is the extent of bordering land subject to flooding. So that last section of the proposed boardwalk, which is colored grayish blue, is in riverfront area and bordering land subject to flooding. The hatched portion of that blue is BLSF, and there's a little sliver of riverfront area that extends to the west of that. The boardwalk was, and Greg and Bill spent a significant time out at the site trying to realign this thing and pull it out of the BVW to the most practical extent and the extent that made sense based on the goals of the project. And we've reduced it by, I think, at least 50% in bordering vegetated wetlands. Where it still is shown in BVW is on that western edge. And yeah, the reason it's still shown in BVW there is because the goal is to try to get it away from the paved public road to the extent possible. And that's going to allow the removal of roughly 150 square feet of old relict board bog bridges in the BVW. And it'll also allow for the revegetation of woody vegetation along the shoulder of the road in the BVW to screen the BVW and the boardwalk from the road. So that's the primary reason for showing it in BVW over on that side. The other areas where it's showing in BVW are just two crossings in order to complete the loop.
And we tried to
That's-
pick spots that were void of vegetation to minimize any impact to shrubs. Dave may have mentioned this, but no trees are proposed to be removed at all as a result of this new layout. And we did have to cross the wetlands, so trying to cross in the narrowest points seemed to make the most sense. So we could show the commission we've done our best to minimize impact to resource areas.
Yeah, and Delia, was Bert out there
Yeah.
visiting the site, and you feel pretty good about minimizing, the boardwalk and the BVW and?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's, topography and other
Right.
considerations out there, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. So as Greg said, we're avoiding trees. We're not avoiding trees just in the BVW. We're actually avoiding cutting trees down for the entire boardwalk, including in uplands. So, but you're right, topography is definitely a factor.
Serving a
Because,
meeting that's,
Sorry, if you, I'm just gonna move this. Okay,
Okay,
sorry, go ahead.
sorry about this.
so because this is intended to be an ADA compliant boardwalk, we have to be mindful of topography and grades. We can't have people in wheelchairs trying to climb and go down things like this. So those were factors in this new alignment as well. So that's that part. As far as the narrative, we did expand the narrative. Bill provided a bunch of construction information as well as photographs of similar projects he's done in towns in Massachusetts. And that was part of the package that we provided. And it went into quite a bit of detail in terms of the phasing of construction and all the individual steps that are required from beginning to end to construct one of these things. The site plans, as Greg mentioned, were prepared by Niche Engineering, and they signed and stamped these plans. They are a professional land surveyor. So we've got much more detail than what was originally proposed on those GIS-based figures. There are 3 polygons that are kind of almost flesh colored.
Yeah.
That are intended to be the staging areas. And those are all in uplands. And those are surrounded by sedimentation and erosion controls, which we discussed at the last meeting. The commission wanted to see. We are showing a proposed replication area on the western side of the project of 6 square feet. That is intended to offset the footprint, the collective footprint of the posts that are going to be in bordering vegetated wetland. If you add all those posts up in BVW, it's about 2.9 square feet. So just under 3 square feet. We're prepared to put a replication area in to offset that at least a 2-to-1 ratio. But we're also removing the bog bridges that are in the BVW, and those total about 150 square feet. So if the commission is willing to accept the removal of the bog bridges in lieu of us going out there with shovels and digging, 6 square foot hole, we'd be happy with that. Something.
I think we can figure that out.
Yeah.
Hey, just a quick question, just on one of your flesh colored staging areas. Perhaps it's the one in the lower left-hand corner, at least by way of screen. Is that still within the 25 a little bit?
It is, and in fact, that's an area just off the paved roadway where when Bill and I were out there, we were trying to find spots that equipment could be dropped off very easily, and also areas that were cleared currently. And the one up to the top of the screen is right off the Newbury Court driveway entrance. There's a bench there. It's a big flat lawn area. So we were going to put erosion controls there, and it just made sense that the equipment could be unloaded right in that flat spot. The spot you were referring to is an area just off the road where you could pull over today with a car or a truck and just pull off the side of the road without sinking in. So it is in the no disturb zone partially and in the no build zone, but it's a spot that just made more sense. It was close to the boardwalk and currently void of vegetation. We could slide it further down to the bottom of the page. I guess that would be south, but I think there is some vegetation there. The third spot is a big flat open area out near 2 existing benches next to the Buttercup Trail. So we figured we could easily walk equipment out, straddling in between the no build zone from both wetlands to get to that area. And I do have photos of all 3 areas too that I can pull up if the commission would like to see those.
Yeah, no, that's okay, but I think if you can make an effort to stay out of the 25, you should make that.
Yeah.
You should make that effort just to keep everything on sides here.
Okay.
Yeah, the intent was to try to use areas that are already mostly devoid of vegetation to the extent we could. That area that we're showing down there in the lower left is, based on what I saw out there, it looks like an area that's maintained probably by the highway department, roadside vegetation, routine management of vegetation. So it seemed like a logical place to do it.
Yeah.
Oops.
Can I just ask about access to the trails? You've mentioned ADA compliance and wheelchairs and things. How does a wheelchair access any of this. I mean, I've been out there running. I know there's steep slopes to get down from those stairs or where that, upper staging area is. There's a staircase, but I don't know that there are ramps that get down to that level, are there?
Yeah, so there's gonna be a ramp, and I'll let Bill explain it too, but I believe there's gonna be a ramp up near the Newbury Court paved driveway, and then we added a little spur coming off that will get you onto the Buttercup Trail between the two staging areas at the bottom.
So the biggest problem there is the distance from the road to where it gets down to the wetland area. And so we need about, you can do 10 inches, 10 inches for every 120 inches. So every 10 feet, we can go down 10 inches. And that the length there is long enough that we can get down to the topography of the area and green by the distance that we have. And the same on the other side. So the distances are there so we can do that 8% grade.
But wouldn't that want to be shown on the plan?
Mhm.
I mean, because that's still in our jurisdiction as you're getting to the new boardwalk.
It is in the plan.
This area up here,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just don't see anything necessarily that's indicating a
ramp.
ramp or slope or something to get to the tie in there.
It's all a ramp.
Yeah,
Boardwalk
that
is
is
a
the
ramp.
ramp. The apex of, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but the apex of the trail there where it juts northward
Yeah,
actually almost meets up with a sidewalk right there. So you
Yeah.
would access the boardwalk from there, and it would ramp down gradually in either direction, depending on which direction someone wanted to take the trail. Is that right, Bill?
Yep.
so you can come off.
So you come off the sidewalk and you go overland for that short stretch to get onto that apex.
we'll look at that spot because it looks like the boardwalk is by eye, probably about 8 to 10 feet off the sidewalk. That's currently shown.
Exactly. It drops off pretty steeply from that sidewalk.
Yeah, so we may need to add a little portion of ramp there that will get you up to the sidewalk. I see the area that you mean.
Yeah, that would be good to attend to. Thank you.
And then on the other side, the spur, as you called it, that would lead you right to the Buttercup Trail.
Yeah,
So
and
there's
that was long enough off the boardwalk. In that location, it's probably only going to be 6 inches to a foot off the ground. So that ramp will be very
Yeah.
flat.
Yeah.
So do you have a layer that shows the existing Buttercup Trail?
So it may show on the existing conditions plan. Let me just,
Just would be nice to see it on this plan to just
Mhm.
understand those connections.
quick. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's on here, but we can get that on there.
Good.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. And then I think that as one of the notes we're looking at, there's really I guess a question in regard to width of the boardwalk. As you're prescribing it, I think it's 4 feet now, if that's correct.
In the BVW.
In the BBW, yeah, and then there's the question about how high that boardwalk is by way of, looking for basically, 1 foot of height for every 1 foot of width. And I'm not sure exactly what your heights are in the boardwalk, if you will.
So that's a good question. In fact, we had a conference call via Zoom this morning with Delia and Bert and the Wetlands Program Circuit Rider for the Northeast Regional Office, Alicia Galen, to try to get some idea of what DEP's guidance or expectations are with respect to that. They don't have a formal policy. I think in the past, they have ideally said that you would try to match the height above the ground of the boardwalk with the width of the boardwalk, but it's not a hard and fast rule. What they really want to just ensure is that the function of the wetland is still being provided based on the final configuration of the boardwalk. So what we've proposed in BVW is to narrow the typical width of the boardwalk, which is 5 feet, down to 4 feet, and to elevate the boardwalk 2 to 3 feet above the existing grade. Now, there's some challenges with that, but we can do it. If you look at a typical inland wetland boardwalk, especially in forested areas, they're generally 6 inches to a foot above grade. That's where the decking is usually, or the bottom of the decking. We can go 2 to 3 feet. It will require some additional bracing probably to just make sure that the boardwalk is stable. We can do that. After our call today, both Greg and I went in different directions trying to find some representative boardwalks in wetlands that actually are elevated to get a sense of what vegetation looks like underneath them. They're very difficult to find because most boardwalks are not actually elevated that high. We think that in the emergent areas, which is the portions of the wetland over to the west, having that thing elevated 2 to 3 feet should allow more than enough, and with spacing of the decking, spacing of the boards and the decking should allow more than enough light to allow the herbaceous species under there to still thrive. I don't think we can comfortably say with any predictability what the plant community is going to look like in the forested areas under the boardwalk, regardless of how high it is, because you've got other limitations, mostly due to the canopy and the shading that's already there. So, the forest floor in a typical red maple swamp like this is, there's a lot of variability. In some places you have an herbaceous layer with things like cinnamon fern or skunk cabbage or royal fern or things growing. In other places you have bare soil. And so it's difficult for us to say that whether it's 6 inches above the ground or 3 feet above the ground, what's actually going to happen with the plant community underneath there. But I think we can say pretty comfortably that the functions and the values that are provided by the wetland will not be impaired by having an elevated structure above it. It's not going to affect flood control. It's not going to affect groundwater recharge and discharge. It shouldn't affect, toxicant and nutrient retention.
I think the concern with that, David, is just that, we're really sort of focusing on the potential impact from shading. And so, we're hoping that you can provide some level of comfort that, if the boardwalk is raised 2 to 3 feet, that there will be some, I understand you can't say what the plant community is going to be, but I think the commission is, looking for some, confirmation or some level of comfort that you're not going to have a bare soil condition that would indicate, since that would then be an impact that you then should be mitigating for it. You know what I mean?
Also,
Yeah.
I agree with you. And I also am wondering, Bill, you're working with Mass Audubon. I think Mass Audubon ought to have guidelines about that. They have boardwalks, for example, I think down in Broadmoor in South Natick, they have boardwalks that run there. They're fairly high. It's been a long time since I've been there. But I would think they would have some guidelines too to help us to figure this out.
And
If
there's a
DEP doesn't.
boardwalk in Carlisle. What is that boardwalk in Carlisle? It is raised and there is vegetation growing underneath it.
Yeah, you're right. Is it not the cranberry bog area? Is it?
I don't think it's the cranberry bog. There's an overlook. It's not Foss Farm. I can't think of.
Well, and what about Minuteman?
How about on Great Meadows, right down on the Dyke Trail? There's a boardwalk that goes out for an
I was out there
observation.
today.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And that's pretty high.
So
Nice.
I'm gonna pull up some photos of, I'm gonna see if I can pull these up.
Well, while Greg's doing that, let me say that every boardwalk we've built has been kind of an experiment. And for the most part, we have vegetation under even boardwalks that are 6 inches above. This is a terrible season to be out there trying to show that.
It is.
Because almost everything is dormant. But yeah, I mean, if you've been to Mass Audubon sanctuaries and you've looked under boardwalks, you will see vegetation. It's not the same vegetation that's getting full sun, but there is vegetation underneath the boardwalks.
And Delia, you do note, at least in our notes here, that the issue in Lincoln, for example, right? And now isn't that DEP telling Lincoln that they should raise their boardwalk?
So they said they should provide replication, and then DEP has very recently withdrawn that appeal.
Okay.
Said we can figure it out.
Oh,
So,
I see. Okay.
so,
So it is a little bit,
so in the call that we had with
Vague.
DEP this morning, it was basically, you know, the guidance that we understood from DEP was basically the commission just needs to have enough information that they feel comfortable.
Okay.
That, you know, the impact from shading will not occur.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so if we move forward and say, okay, the 2 to 3 feet is fine, right? Just out of curiosity, what happens in 5 years if there is a significant impact? I mean, it's all dirt underneath and there's vegetation either side. Is it just, it is what it is at that
I
point?
think
or-
that's correct.
Okay.
At that point, it is what it is. I mean, I
Alright.
think the commission, you know, I think having these photographs would be helpful. You know, any additional information that the applicant can provide, and then the commission should include a finding in the order of conditions that says, based on the information that has been provided.
Yeah.
The commission has determined that this, you know, 2 to 3 feet height is adequate to eliminate the impact from shading.
Right.
I want to also point out, Sarah, you had mentioned Minuteman, you're
Yeah.
correct. The Minuteman Trail has those new boardwalks going in, and they're
Yeah,
fairly
quite a
high over,
Yeah,
Do you know how high? I mean, I don't
so
remember.
all of Stowe one's pretty high, you know.
Yeah, I think.
It's probably 2 to 3 feet anyway.
oh yeah, I would think so, down by the Revere site, those
Yeah.
boardwalks there, they're pretty high.
Yeah, to the bottom of the boardwalk is, I'd say, at least 2 feet. Probably,
And are they
probably
also-
closer to 3 in most places. I'm
That
not
means
sure
it's
I'm
3
not sure if
plus.
that's a 1-to-1. I can't remember. how
And are
wide they
those
are.
also 4 feet wide, or are they only
I
3
don't
foot wide?
remember.
I
don't
think they're
remember how wide
3.
they
I
are.
don't think they're that wide.
Yeah.
You know, 3 to 4.
I think they're probably 4, because I know I've walked my bike on those
Okay,
before, and
or maybe it's
Mhm.
3
4.
would be pretty tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just walk.
So you could, that's another option. You could take a look at some of the Minuteman boardwalks.
So I was out in Sudbury today, off Ware Hill Road, series of boardwalks, and I walked them all. And what I observed out there, they're 5 feet wide, and on average, I'd say they're a foot off the ground. Most of the wetland portions are red maple swamp, so it was a good one to look at. It closely resembles what we have at our site. I did observe at least a foot of vegetation going underneath the boardwalk in all areas, even the really low one. Most of it was partridge berry, princess pine. But you know, with that said, there wasn't a lot of vegetation to observe today, just because of the season.
Yeah.
But I did find one spot where this is one spot where to the top of the decking, it's 28 inches. So a little over 2 feet. And I've got my tape measure there, and it's 28 inches to the top of the deck. And the next photo will show you what I saw underneath. And this vegetation that I saw is extending to the center of the 5-foot section of boardwalk. There was some sedges, there was some soft rush in other areas. But again, you can see how void the area is of vegetation to begin with, just because it's so wet. But I was happy to see that there is vegetation extending to the middle of this portion of the boardwalk. And this is looking in a northerly direction. So I found another spot.
Would be helpful.
Yeah,
This
Yeah.
spot here was 22 inches to the top of the deck, so not quite 2 feet, a little lower. But I was struggling to find vegetation anywhere, just that I could show some meaningful photos to the commission. This vegetation didn't quite extend to the middle of the 5-foot section, but it was in at least 2 feet.
So then I think I would point out there that it's not really the top of decking that matters. I would say it's the bottom, so that you're looking more at 18 inches in this photograph.
Yeah,
So, you know, 1.5 feet is not gonna be adequate.
no, and we're gonna be even better than that. We're gonna be 2 to 3 feet, so but we can
Right,
provide
so
this
if you
information
have
to the
some,
commission.
you know, a couple of examples, a handful of examples that you can provide of where, you know, between the bottom of the decking and the grounds level is, you know, 2 to 3 feet that, you know, you have vegetation. And I understand it's a difficult time of year. I think you're not seeing a lot of vegetation because more that it's a winter condition. And, you know, maybe, Bill, maybe there's some existing photos that Mass Audubon has of, you know, Broadmoor or
Or Minuteman, I do
Yeah.
think that's a great example.
Minuteman yeah, it's worth going out to take a look at that as well.
So the suggestion is that they can provide some good photo documentation
I
and
think
with
so.
some
With the tape
growth.
measure, that's
Yep.
very helpful.
Yeah, tape measure is great,
Yeah.
right? Good scale.
Yeah.
And so are we saying that we're thinking that at a minimum, there's 2 feet of clearance from the structure? In other words,
Yeah.
whatever the
Oh.
structure width is,
Bottom of structure.
from the bottom of the structure, there's at least
To
2
grade is
feet.
2 feet.
I thought it was more. No, I thought it was
I would
3.
say it's at least 2. I
At
mean,
least
given
2.
what we saw in that first photograph with vegetation going into the center line with 2 feet clearance
Okay.
Yeah,
from the bottom of
it's
the
probably even a
structure.
little less, given the tape at 28 inches.
Yeah.
I mean, that structure is probably 6, 7, 8 inches, right? So
Yeah.
it's, so if we can get a 2-foot minimum
Yeah.
clear from structure,
Yeah,
that, and a 4-foot width, that's in the
Right.
BBW.
That
And then
gives
just
you,
what do
you
sorry, go ahead.
know, just 45-degree angle.
Yeah,
2 feet up will give you, you know,
Yeah, true.
probably
Right,
2 feet of coverage and on the other side,
Yeah.
but it's mostly coming from the south, so.
Yeah.
right.
And the
And then
light.
I would just also point out, you know, Greg, you mentioned that between those 2 stockpile areas where the trail meets up with the Buttercup, that you're going to be much lower. That is a section that should be counted as a wetland impact because you're not achieving, you know, so wherever you're not achieving the 2 to 3 feet in, well, I guess that's not in BBW, never mind.
Yeah.
It's not in BBW, okay, sorry.
I just had a question too. I think you mentioned that it's 4-foot width in the BBW.
Yeah,
When you come out of the BBW,
it's fine.
it's 5 feet in width. And then is it gonna be, I assume it'll be lower at that point, or? I'm just curious in terms of what the final details might look like.
It will be, but not a sharp drop. It's gonna be a gradual drop to get back down in elevation.
And that'll be how high eventually off the,
No less than 6, right, Bill?
Right, I mean, we want to keep it at least 6 inches, because if you get lower than that, then you're inviting rot to the wood.
okay, gotcha. Thank you for the clarification.
This is silly, but why not higher? Even on the, why isn't it higher even on the other,
On the upland?
yeah, on the upland?
Yeah,
You know, I think that's a good question, and there's no reason for it not to be higher.
Yeah. Thank you. I think you ought to look at that.
good suggestion. All right, so,
The only reservation I have about that is, and mostly I've done boardwalks that aren't handicapped accessible. And if you're over 36 inches above the surface, then you need a handrail.
Okay,
These are gonna have handrails anyway, so
Yeah.
there's no point in not being higher.
perfect,
Mhm.
great.
great, that's good suggestion. Any other comments from the commission on this at the moment?
No.
All right, is there any public comment regarding to this application? All right, seeing none, Delia? Yeah, I don't see any. So do you think, based on, well, I guess we'll need a resubmission, right? Because we need the little ramp at the top we talked about. The location, a little bit of that stockpile, a little bit more detailing, photo documentation.
Mhm.
based on the discussion this evening, would you guys be comfortable coming back for the March 20th meeting? Which means you'd have to file a week from Friday?
I think that will work. Dave, Bill?
I'm sorry, the submittal deadline again would it be a week from this coming Friday, this Friday?
Week from this coming Friday, yes.
I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, so why don't we hold you for the 20th, and if something goes awry, you can let staff know but we'll expect to see you back on the 20th.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for making the changes that you did.
Yeah, wait, okay, yeah, there's one more comment. We can move
No
on.
problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, guys. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
evening.
You bet,
You
you too.
All right, moving on to our last continuance of the evening. This is notice of intent for Novo Riverside Commons, DEP file 137-1660. And who do we have with us this evening?
I think Brian
Oh,
Butler was out here and. Yeah.
Oh, live bodies.
Coming in now.
all right.
Can you see?
Yes,
Is
yeah.
that okay?
Evening.
Good evening.
You are free to swing these chairs in whatever configuration works for you
Yeah.
through the screens. Layouts. Anyway, you want.
This works. Good evening, guys. Good evening. All right. I guess whoever wants to lead off, name and address for the record, and off we go.
My name is Tom Mikulak. I'm a civil engineer with Beals and Thomas.
Dan Feeney, civil engineer, Bales and Thomas. Brian Butler, Oxford Associates.
So since the last hearing, we submitted some supplemental info to the NRC that included basically a cover letter with included a memo from a structural engineer, a preliminary dewatering stockpile exhibit, as well as a typical cross section for the on-grade trail that showed the shoulders and the reinforcement below as far as the gravel. And so in addition to that, we've also received the GPI peer review letter, and we've had a discussion with them subsequent to that, and it was a productive discussion. There were no real substantial comments regarding the floodplain. They did have comments on the stormwater that we're working through. They will necessitate that we have to remodel, say, the hydrology and the hydraulics. And then there's a slew of comments where it's just a matter of just correcting some minor things like boxes that were checked and things of that nature, as well as some additional plan edits. And yeah, there were also some other comments that we do need some additional clarification on. Comments that came through the DPW, but we're certainly still working through all of those comments. Yeah, that's really the general outline. I don't know if you need me to walk through any of these things that we did submit, or
We could walk through them, or we could just talk about them as we go.
Sure.
Whatever makes most sense. I guess we could, again, we have some notes here. So I guess one of the issues is I know you've noted on the plan some soil stockpiling areas. And I guess one of the thoughts, these aren't, it's a substantial project. And it looked like those are fairly constrained areas for stockpiling something, excavating this size of building and this size of, so.
Just to point out those stockpile, for people on the call, the stockpile areas are shown in the red hatch at the top and bottom.
Thank you, dear. Yeah.
of the plans.
So just, first comment and just looking for a response in terms of how you're gonna handle the soil as it comes out.
sure. And given it's an existing site, I mean, there will be a lot of logistical items that the contractor will have to work in as far as means and methods, and it's not like those two areas are gonna be like the sole locations, like they're phasing that we're not necessarily privy to at the moment. Will potentially dictate where those are. But the idea is, what we showed there is as far away from the resource areas as we could. And just where it made sense, just as far as like, you know, protecting any of the runoff and ensuring that it can be captured. Because the other part of this sketch is the, everything in blue. Those are gonna be like the areas where we're potentially gonna have to de-water, or the blue hatching, and then we show a few outlines. Where those would be, sedimentation areas, either sediment basins or sediment bags, would be pumping.
Let me just point out, so this structure, this one and this one are the ones that are proposed that are thought that those will need dewatering, right?
Yes, wherever there's a relatively significant excavation,
Right.
we assume,
So this light blue hatch, there's 5 areas. This one,
sure.
there's one here. One second, there's 5 total, there's 3 right around the ponds.
Yeah.
And are
This
those
one.
desedimentation areas, like forebays for that, or?
Yes, that's the idea, is like where the dewatering, you know, we show like a little circle where that would be like the pump location and the line to dictate the discharge piping, but it's all schematic at this point, but those
So for
areas,
example, this is
Yes.
a sump pump here,
Right.
yes,
goes into this basin.
yep,
So have they been sized for anything?
no, not at this time.
So how do you, like, do you know what the volume is that you are anticipating that you're gonna need to dewater?
As part of the SWIP, we'll have to size like sedimentation.
But you need to do that
basins.
as part of the Wetlands Protection Act, regs too,
So, okay.
right?
So we
So
will-
the construction, pollution prevention, sedimentation, erosion control plan, that's something that the wetlands regs also require, right?
Yes. So at this time, right now, this is all largely schematic. It
Schematic
was
at
just a
this
matter of
point.
showing like general locations of where these things would be. We haven't put any real design as far as like depths, for example. But the idea was just to show logically where could you maybe grade in a basin, the flatter areas. And then I show the arrows, those would be the discharge points, really pointing those at existing outfall locations. Just to try and minimize.
Right, so
Any
there's an
additional-
existing outfall
Yes.
here, there's an existing outfall here.
Right.
I don't think there's an existing one here.
That's where the equalizer pipe is between,
Okay.
actually, you know what, there might be a catch basin there. There is a pipe.
Yeah.
You know, it's between those 4 trees
Okay,
in that area. You can see
Okay.
there's some text. So there's an outfall there. Yeah, and then just north of that, the 4-inch cast iron pipe, which is,
I can't see, maybe you
sorry.
can.
I've certainly been in these plans enough to
Yeah,
be familiar with it, but yeah, that was the idea, to just show like relatively flat areas where you could grade something in and then discharge.
Right.
To an outfall that made sense.
And is there any thought about, you know, as you're excavating the soils, right?
Sure.
You know, I would assume some of those soils are gonna be pretty wet and muddy, right? So how, is there a dewatering plan for that soil as it's gonna be stockpiled up there, and where that runoff goes, and how do you might capture that?
Yeah, I mean, it's at this stage, we really don't have that level of detail, because it's certainly something that I think would have to coordinate. And I know it's gonna be required as part of this permit, but you know, initially we figured that it's gonna be a lot of contractor means and methods that will dictate where certain things go, depending on what equipment they have and where it makes logical sense. I believe we have a note on this plan and just say that it will be modified as required,
yeah,
essentially.
I mean, you have a note that says a SWIP will be prepared prior to construction, and I think, you know, what I think we're seeing on this plan is that, you know, it's obviously, it's a tight site and we all recognize that. But the, you know, the muddy sort of slurry that's gonna come up as you excavate those sediments, how are those gonna be contained? And those areas are so small. And those dewatering, there's no pre-treatment, there's, you know, I mean, and they're discharging directly into the ponds. So how are you, you know, giving the commission a level of comfort that you're not just pouring, you know, sediment laden water into a resource area? So.
Yeah, I would think you'd be, on the dewatering side, you'd be running that through some filtration, I would think.
Yeah,
Right.
Certainly, and I don't know if your notes had that on there.
Yeah,
you
it
know,
was, it says that there's
like
You know,
flocculation
options.
tanks and-
Yeah,
Well-
you can handle it in different ways if
Yeah.
you wanted to,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, as Tom noted, it's, you know, it's sort of hard to dictate what the best method is to.
And we're not asking you to do
Yeah.
that, but we're asking you to provide a plan that the commission can approve that is recognizing the site conditions that you have
Mhm.
and ensuring that you have an adequate sediment control,
Yeah.
erosion control and pollution prevention plan,
Yeah.
for construction purposes.
Yeah, even if it's outlining the parameters of what you're thinking, so as the contractor comes on board, right, he understands what he's gonna have to provide and allocate, and so that there's
I
more
think-
comfort there in terms
Yeah.
of how
I mean, I
his
think-
means and methods are gonna come forth, they're gonna comply with
Right.
what comes out of the commission, if you will, and
Sure.
certainly with your engineering, so.
Okay, and I think, you know, the anticipation is that the contractor is going to need to be continually, removing the excavated materials from the site. It's not, you know, because it's.
So is that like live loading you're gonna have?
Yeah, you know, I mean, there'll be a stockpile, but
Yeah.
it won't sit there, you
Right.
know, as long as a typical stockpile.
But
because-
even that
because
note
that's
should
gonna
be on the
that-
plan, you know.
Right.
Because, you know, we're removing all that material. We have very little need for fill material.
Of course,
out at the
right,
site,
it's a fleet-
Because with the, you know, floodplain and all that, we're, you know, the podium level parking from the buildings in particular.
Right,
are
there's nowhere to lose it.
excess- It's just excess
Yeah.
material.
Yeah.
So.
So I had a question about that podium level. I mean, so on this, you show, I'm just gonna zoom in, a little bit because I need to. So you have the first floor elevation at 129 and you have a podium level at 118, but
Yeah.
what's the bottom elevate? I mean, there's a lower elevation than that, correct?
No,
Is that, or is 118?
118 is the lowest level.
That's the
So-
lowest level,
So for the
okay.
other building, for
Yeah.
the 292 building, there's two levels of podium parking. So,
But I thought there was just one here too. It says first floor and podium level.
yeah, so the podium, the upper podium levels at 125, there's a speed ramp. Basically just lower than the building on this plan, which is basically southeast, east of the building. If you can see that outline, that's a ramp that goes down to a lower level of parking within the 292 building.
It's a little hard to see on this plan.
Yeah,
So-
so where you see that like 130.64 spot grade, can you see that?
Right where the
sort of-
building bends.
Is the,
Yeah, right there. So,
Yeah.
so if you keep going to your right,
To my right.
yeah, that's the speed ramp. Can you see the
Oh,
outline there?
this?
Yeah, so it goes all the way, you know, to the right there. That's how you get down from 125 to 115.
and what's the ground floor elevation on this
Yeah.
side?
That
It's like
one is
115.
135.
Okay, so it's
67.
two full levels.
Two
Low
levels, yeah,
grade.
so there's, for this building, there's a parking basically at grade and then a level below it. Whereas for the 294 building, it's basically one level below grade, right?
Okay.
It's-
So why don't you show that elevation
Yeah,
on
that's,
the
that's the
drawing?
confusion, is it's just showing the podium, the
Right.
first podium level.
Right, right,
it doesn't
right.
There's a level below
But we
that.
can add that.
I
you know,
think-
that
I mean,
says
that would be
lower-
helpful.
lower
Yeah, yeah, we were-
yeah.
podium
yeah.
level.
We're trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why, you know, that building 292 is hatched. At 125, you wouldn't hit any groundwater. It's when you go down to the 115.
Gotcha.
You know, and these are sandy soils,
Mhm.
that are out here, so, you know, anticipating that groundwater, is fairly level with the, you know,
The pond.
the pond, even maybe a little lower than the pond.
Yeah.
I think the pond is, you know, holding water in it, you know, it's got, you know,
Mhm.
a little bit of, you know, organic silty material confining it. So certainly groundwater is gonna be above, the Assabet River elevation. You know, there's gonna be some hydraulic grade line coming down to it, but it's probably this water level of the pond shown at 121 too. It's probably gonna be, my guess is in the 119 range for the seasonal high groundwater out at the site. So, so certainly, you know,
Have you
building.
done test pitting?
no, we haven't done any test pits out in the area.
Okay. So, and has Public Works mentioned that when you do, they will want to witness those?
Yes,
Okay, okay.
the GPI letter that we received was like a combined GPI.
Yeah,
Concord
yeah.
DPW.
I didn't remember seeing that.
And
in
so, yeah, they would want to see that prior to a building permit being issued, so.
Okay. So we'll get a little bit more, next time around, we'll get a little bit more detail and thought in regard to some of those considerations. In terms of understanding that nobody can pin down what the contractors mean, the methods are going to be ultimately, but certainly some of perhaps the parameters of some of those stockpiles and things of that
Well, and I
nature.
think also,
And-
there needs to be some understanding of what volumes, you're
Well,
talking about.
They'll have to calculate that anyway, right?
Yeah,
Ultimately.
right.
Yeah, I think, what we can do is, look at the permeability of this typical sandy soil. And then the area or volume
Yeah.
that's being excavated, so we get an inflow in and have to figure out how much is gonna be coming out.
Right. And I think it's also helpful if, for me, I just roughly calculated these areas to be just area wise, like 12,000 square feet
Mhm.
between the two, and that's just a really rough,
Mhm.
approximation, but not really understanding how much material is coming out. I mean, these things would have to be pretty high. And obviously close to the construction.
And you're not gonna ever stockpile that close to that edge of the building because you're trying to set up a foundation there while you're.
Yeah.
But the plan still is to, any excess material is supposed to
Yeah,
go
it's
offsite.
gonna be, it's
These are,
gonna be a continuous operation. It's
Right.
not,
Right.
they're not gonna excavate all of the 292, store it, and
Sure.
then a month later haul it all offsite as they're excavating it.
So maybe some of that methodology can
Yeah.
go
We can
into a
certainly-
narrative as well, because
we
that
can
I think would be
certainly-
helpful for us
Yeah.
to understand, okay, we get it. Whether you live
Right.
load or take it out the
Right,
next
you're not
day or
planning it's gonna
two.
be 100 feet high.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Which
That's great.
I'm sure you're not, but it's, I think just having a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so we had asked at the last meeting about the relocating the path, and we understand that it can't come because of grading issues.
Yeah, we have a fairly significant grade to make up from the back of the building down to the path. The
Yeah.
path got located where it got located, both to try to save the trees at one point, but also just due to the offset it needs from the building.
Yeah, I thought there was a couple little areas that last time we looked at that potentially getting it out of the 25.
Yeah.
That's what I recollect, but
Yeah,
so just no movement at all on that.
it's so tight with the grading that if you can see, all the grade contours as you come down from the building, down to the path. I don't.
and it's 16 feet across section.
Yeah, so, what the.
I thought it was a 10-foot wide path.
It's a 10-foot wide paved. It has
Yep.
3-foot shoulders on
Mhm.
each side to meet the MassDOT requirements, for, a multi-use trail. So the rest of the trail, that the town would be doing would be 16 feet basically in width. So, that's what, was desired through our site. So even though it's only 10 feet wide paved, it's basically 16 feet flat,
And by the way, when you say mass up, that's primarily to accommodate the fire apparatus, correct? Because again,
It is also going to potentially be used for emergency vehicle
I mean, that's-
apparatus.
isn't that
so
one of the primary reasons for it is fire access?
Fire department's requiring it. so that
The
they
fire
can-
department would like to have the access back there, whether.
You gotta
it's
get to the
for
back
fire
of the
or for
property.
Ambulance or, so.
You gotta get within
so-
150 feet, I think.
So that's
right?
why it's reinforced
Yep.
on each side, but the 16-foot originally, it was always gonna be 16 feet, even if the fire department hadn't requested it, just, for the MassDOT standards, it's just 3 feet now on each side would be reinforced turf. So it's that geogrid material
Mm.
grass can grow up through, so you can drive vehicles on it. It has the loading capability for larger vehicles. But that, it was gonna be that flat section anyway from the start, just, because they like to have a shoulder, so you don't have an immediate
Sure,
Mhm.
you don't wanna just fall off the pavement and sink a foot.
Well, you
into the
got, yeah,
ground.
well, you got, like, if you have a walker going in one direction and a biker passing them and somebody coming the other way,
Mhm.
you know, the walker can get off on the shoulder and stuff, and
Mhm.
it just provides a little bit more freedom of movement.
Mhm.
So did you say it was, is it required or requested by the fire department?
Required.
Oh, yeah, you gotta
They-
get.
they- we had a meeting with them and they noted, they would like the ability to be able to get the vehicle back there. It might not be, you know, their largest
Yeah, smaller.
fire,
apparatus.
but, you know, certainly an ambulance or, you know, one of the smaller fire trucks back there.
Usually you gotta, given the length of the building, usually you gotta, you know,
Yeah.
you're within 150 feet of the corners
Alright.
on the back, all around the building. Okay, well, I guess, you know, mildly disappointed we couldn't at least push it out of the 25 a little bit.
Show me where it is in the 25. I couldn't quite tell. I wasn't at the last meeting. Where is it?
Yeah,
The,
that's the
nine.
50 there, so the
Here's-
25 is, you see that, it's right above
Oh.
the thing, so it kind of.
So it was in, if I recall, it was, I'm not seeing the 25 on
Right
the
there.
plan.
Right, I'm not.
So you see the word 25 right above where your cursor is, right?
Okay,
So you
there's
gotta
the
find the
25.
line that goes with it though.
Right, so here's the 25.
Yeah, So right around that back corner there, it's in the 25, and then you can see where
Right.
BF6
Yeah, right there.
sticks
Yeah.
out, it's gonna be down in there
Right.
as well.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, down in that area as well, so it's hard to see the line, but right down in that area, so, you can see the grades that come down from the building, because again, the first floor is up, you know, 135, so we have like a partially, exposed foundation there in the back, and then it slopes down, and then you have the walkway, below it.
So you couldn't put any kind of a retaining wall or something to bring that out of the 25 foot, huh?
Yeah, it's difficult in that location too, because of, you know, for building height, reasons. If you're, within a certain distance of your building, you have to be at a certain average grade elevation around the building, otherwise it's gonna count as another floor. So this building, you know, the podium level, which is at grade as you drive into it, is buried enough that it's a below grade in terms of building height calculation.
Mhm.
Could you look at that one more time though, since you're coming back anyway, just
Yeah.
to see if you couldn't tuck that in further?
Because a retaining wall, again, still allows you to, you know, build up whatever soil you want in the back. It's just a matter of retaining it's not a high retaining wall, right? You're just trying to push that embankment back a little bit to ease off the 25.
I will just note that, you know, it is the 25-foot no disturb zone under our bylaw, which they're not subject to under the.
State.
40
under the
B.
state, under the 40B.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, you know,
We'll take a look.
appreciate you
Take a
taking a
look. That'd
look.
be
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
All right, and I think another note we have is, I know we talked a little bit about, when the developer suggested he wanted to provide a community benefit. I think he had offered a 7-acre parcel I was already had a CR restriction on it, so I guess we didn't see a lot of value in that, in the sense that the town already has those kind of controls over that parcel, if you will. And I know we received a letter where the owner declined to assist with some of the CR work we have to do in terms of revising some of the CRs to allow for the multimodal paths and the bridge, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess the question I would have is understanding that once that bridge is built and it ties into the Baker Bridge complex, certainly the benefactors of that are going to be certainly the users of the Baker Bridge community, whether they're residential or office or what have you. And just curious if what is the community benefit that the developers are going to offer at this point?
I mean, the construction of the elevated bridge, right? Is that, I mean, that's.
Right, yeah, and.
Insignificant.
Stephanie Kiefer, I'm the author of the letter. that
Oh,
was
great.
sent to you, so-
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you again for your time this evening. And as I attempted to point out, within that correspondence, the applicant really does want to continue to work with the town. This is gonna be a great project. And I think that you're asking what is the benefit kind of that, is that the project is getting and what benefit can the project provide to the town?
Well, I guess the question really is that there was a benefit to be offered. Respectfully, we thought that offering didn't offer much of a benefit, if you will, the land, the
Right,
7
right.
acres. Given how it's positioned with the CR today.
Right, right.
And so, I think our suggestion last time was maybe there's a little financial assistance to help with the surveying and the, reallocating where the certain access points are and et cetera, because we have to modify the CR for the pathway and the bridge.
Yeah.
And I know that wasn't taken up by the developer. So I guess the last question is, and my understanding is that bridge element part of that was gonna be built anyway, the 144 feet of that.
I believe,
224?
I believe that was a missing part from the town, so that's somewhere where the developer is coming in and saying, when you would like this connection, we will do this part of this connection. So it's actually from within, it's 900 feet plus public access trail that the
Yeah.
project has, right? And then there's this other 224-foot connector piece
Mhm.
of an elevated like wooden walkway that we were proposing to like offer as a benefit to the
Okay.
town. And there's roughly 146 of that is within the area subject to the conservation restrictions. So there's a piece of it that's fully outside of the CR, and then there's a piece of it that's within the conservation restriction.
Gotcha.
We kept it elevated in wooden, and very happy as I attempted to convey within my correspondence that as I understand, the town's at like a 25% design on it. So we recognize that, the town needs to go through permitting, and it might be adjusting slightly the location of that. So we're continuing our offer to have that connecting piece. And so, we feel that that's going to be a great amenity to the town and to this community as well. And so we just want to like underscore that we're committed to continuing to provide that connector piece.
Okay, and did your letter clarify that, so you're going to do I forget the exact linear footage, 224 feet or
I think that's
something like that,
Yeah.
but suggested that if there's more permitting necessary to kind of tie it all together, then the town would undertake that. And then, but if the permitting is all put into place, then you would build that 244 feet.
Correct, and we appreciate that, like, within this NOI, we submitted because we wanted to give the NRC kind of the full project proposal, but we recognize that piece of it, that connector trail, I'm gonna call it for a
Sure.
better term. That's gonna have to be timed with the town's timing, where they're permitting, their funding and all of that, so we recognize that. So to the extent that we want the NRC to see what we're proposing, but we know that piece really is likely gonna have to be finalized down the road.
Sure,
you
that
know,
makes perfect
so,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the request isn't to assist with the permitting piece of that. That's something that I think we have, that the conservation restriction at Baker Ave, as well as the one at VOA, that we'll just focus on the one at Baker Ave. I mean, that provides for pedestrian footpaths and a pedestrian footbridge. So it's silent, it doesn't allow bicycles, and this is a multimodal path that is so the CRs have to be amended. And that's where we're looking for some assistance from tourists, because the benefit that is being provided. So it sort of feels a little bit like, there was a parcel B that was provided as a intended community benefit, which Commissioner said there's really no benefit. It is within the CR, it's within wetlands. There's already the ability to put trails if that was ever something that anybody wanted to do. So in lieu of that proposal of parcel B, understanding that there is that 224 feet, that the applicant is contributing, and understanding the tremendous community benefit that this trail connection will provide to current office employees at, the Taurus Holdings at 300 Baker Ave and future residents at the Novo, this is, I think it's a request for that contribution in lieu of the community benefit for parcel B. Is that sort of an accurate?
Yes,
It
that summarizes it well.
Kevin Hurley, I'm the land planner that is working on the property, live at 25 Lang Street.
Thank you.
The original proposal that we submitted in September to the Board of Appeals included the 936 feet of trail. When the planning office told us that 936 feet didn't connect to their design and that they would have to start the process all over again, and we've evidently been at this process for 20 years, according to the planning office, we agreed to build the 224 feet. The 224 feet is principally so that the town's design will conform to what they've already filed with MassDOT. That 224 feet of elevated trail, we feel is going to cost somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000. But we added that to our project after our initial filing. And I think that's a significant contribution. We've also been asked to give a number of contributions to other things, the Main Street Baker Avenue intersection. This town wants sustainability, so we're going with geothermal. The geothermal is going to cost millions. It'll be based upon holes drilled down into the earth to create that geothermal. So there really are a lot of things in addition to the 51 affordable units that we're giving. But from your perspective, we're building that lane to make the town's portion of the project feasible, because Elizabeth tells us they can't restart and pick another path. And that will cost us 100 to 200,000.
So and just to clarify, the 224 linear feet of bridging estimated is between 100 and 200,000.
Right.
Okay.
And it's 224 feet.
Mm-hmm.
We submitted a schematic drawing by the structural engineer. It is a lot of work.
Okay.
Right. And to the extent, I hear you with the parcel B that you
Yep.
say is already subject to that.
Yep.
And I think that our intent there wasn't to offer you a nothing, that definitely wasn't it, but I know that a lot of communities like to not only just have land subject to a conservation restriction, but they actually want to have the ownership. And so, if that's not of value, we appreciate that, and we didn't mean to insult you.
No, I mean, it's
no.
definitely a value if there's some value associated with it, right? So if it is connected to an existing town parcel or land trust land, or, if there's some, that it can be a value, but it's the configuration of the land within the CR. It's essentially landlocked. It's in wetlands, that's,
Sure,
there's
no,
there's
and
no
I
purpose to
think-
have it.
Absolutely, I appreciate that point, but, and so that's fine, but just to give you an
Oh,
idea
yeah.
where we were coming from, that if it was important to the town to say, oh, we own this much land that's, preserved and, in our ownership, so, but I absolutely hear you on that, like, you're like, well, we'd rather have our land owned that, if it, has linkage to other land.
Right.
And we appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you for the background.
Sure.
It's helpful to know, kind of where you've been and some of the other, conversations you had with the other boards. I guess I would just sum it up, just ask you if you could just think about that one more time, if you will. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Appreciate it. All right, other comments from the commission?
No.
You good? Nick, you good? All right, is there any public comment regarding this application? No? All right. So I guess you've got some more work to do. You're obviously waiting on some other boards as well. So would you like to continue the March 20th, or do you want to think that might be a little too soon based on other other things you're waiting on?
Yeah, I think we wanna come back on the 20th, and if we're not ready, then ask for continuing
Sure.
before the hearing, but that way, if we can check off some of these items, whether it's, taking a closer look at the pathway location, the dewatering. I think by then we'll have, a formal response to the GPI comments, things like that.
That would be
There's
great.
Certainly other things that, can go beyond that, but not to lose the momentum, and I think, that works out with our timeline. So,
Okay, well, we'll put you on the 20th, and if something comes up, let us know.
all right, we appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks very much for
Thank
your
you.
time this evening.
Thank you.
Okay. So, moving on to our new applications this evening. First one is a notice of intent for 23 Shirley Street, DEP file 137-1664.
I'm here for that.
Good evening.
Hey, all right.
Name and address for the record.
Yep, so my name is Nathaniel. I'm with James McNary, and I'm here representing 23 Shirley Street. I'm not sure if the owner is in the audience also or not, Carolyn Holden. Not, I'm just gonna go ahead anyway.
Hey, help yourself.
Okay. Excellent.
General contractor?
Hi, good evening. Okay, we got everybody here.
All right, so this is a single family house off of Shirley Street. So it's a rather small lot. It's only it's less than 5,500 square feet. Shirley Street's to the north, and there is a bordering vegetated wetland to the rear of the property, off-site to the south, and it projects 100-foot buffer zone past the front of the property. So the whole property is within 100-foot buffer zone, and then I'm hovering my cursor right now along the 50, and then there's also the 25. So a good portion of the house and a lot of lawn disturbed area for the backyard are within the 50 and a tiny little bit within the 25. So the purpose of this project is to construct an addition to the east side of the house. So it's the kind of the heavy line that I'm hovering my cursor on now. So it's kind of a small existing house. So the purpose is to give it some extra living space. A lot of it is a benefit to kind of like the upstairs where the bedrooms are to make it more inhabitable. The house is more than 100 years old. So an update like this is definitely appropriate. I'll mention that also this is going before the ZBA next month for the height within the side yard allowance. So it's in the side yard by a couple of feet, which is allowed, but it's above the height that you need. Just kind of a side note. So this is subject to ZBA approval. So in accordance with Concord's guidelines for existing structures within the no build zone, we have the existing house 37.7 feet away. So the addition is holding a greater setback to the wetland at 40.6 feet away. So it's not coming any closer to the wetland. And part of that also, we have a little wall right here that we're going to either remove or do some work on these plans. It shows us reconstructing it, but I was talking to the owner today. They're probably going to get rid of it and regrade it. So that'll be part of it, but that'll come in the next turn of plans anyway. I won't go through all the specific numbers, but as per usual, we had a whole table kind of going through the existing proposed impervious and the mitigation requirements. So we're proposing as of now, the planting area, as it's shown kind of on the edge of where our tree line was surveyed. It is 327 square feet planted with 14 shrubs. So that's to offset the impervious area increase at whatever different amounts are required for increases within the 50 and then outside the 50. Like I said, the whole table breaks it down. There's no need to go through every little point unless you want me to. And then other than that, one thing that's proposed, I know that staff made a comment on this, is that we're proposing, excuse me, a fence behind the mitigation area before the slope drops off. I'm sure the Carolyn, if she wanted to at some point, could maybe talk more about why she's doing this, but basically it drops off very, very steeply here and goes down kind of to the wetland, further down to the river. So the fence is kind of provided for safety for kids that'll be playing in the yard and similar. And it's kind of, I I don't have all the information available, but I know the two, properties to either side, similarly have a fence that kind of runs along in a similar way. So just as kind of a noted example, not necessarily justification for it here, but it's kind of in line with what a lot of other houses on the street have because of the drop off. And like I said, I know there was a comment on it among others, which I can go through if everybody wants, but that is a pretty good summary, I think, of everything. So if Carolyn or her contractor don't have anything else to add, I can hand it back to the chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Nathaniel. Anything to add?
Well, thank you for having us tonight. I think a couple things. First off, it's a very small house. And it's so close to the school that we decided to put the addition on, if it's all going to be approved, to make it work for a family of 4. Currently, there's not even a bathroom on the 2nd floor. And so that's how the whole addition process got started. The other thing is, the fence, I personally feel strongly about, because the drop off behind the house is really steep. I have a 4-year-old grandson that I could just imagine going right over the side on that. And so right away, if you think about it as being a family home, because it's so close to the school, somewhere there needs to be a fence in the yard. And there's not a lot of backyard, so we're hoping it's enough back that you can have, 2 kids play back there or something like that. So that's the thinking on the fence.
Yeah, as far, the fence is actually a safety issue.
Yeah.
I think Bert was out there and you looked at it, you really didn't want to walk down the slope because it was so steep.
It's a steep slope.
Yeah. And right now there's some vegetation there, but that's not gonna keep
There's
the kids out.
invasives there.
Yeah, and so I think a fence is actually, and it doesn't have to be a big fence, a 3-foot or 4-foot fence or something. And whether it's down the slope or up the slope before it starts dropping off, whatever would appease everybody, I guess.
Yeah, I wonder about temporary fence. That's possible, that's in our regulations, but, I mean, I know with my own grandkids, I mean, we put up wire, fencing to keep them from getting further, and as opposed to putting up a significant fence like you're trying to put up here.
Yeah, see, I think the issue with just a fence in this location is it's hard for it to happen because it's in the 25.
Yeah.
So that's,
Not even like
No.
just a simple.
Well, I think we could keep it out of the 25.
So I think maybe something to consider, I mean, you have a mitigation area here with the fence behind it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe what you can be thinking about is having that planting area be like a living fence,
Right.
right? So that you have, because that is intended not to be like a landscaped area, but to be a naturalized buffer.
Mhm.
So, you plant that and there's the ability to, have the sort of hard stop of the lawn. That's how a lot of projects are approached.
Yeah.
These sorts of
I
situations.
feel that it is a very steep drop off. I feel for a small child who's enough tottery, they could go right over the side. Or a dog, a puppy, whatever, but I feel like some sort of fence needs to be there. It really is a safety issue, because it's not even like a
And the
slope
fence-
you'd walk
that's a-
down.
The commission has a bylaw that
Yeah.
prohibits structures, prohibits anything in the 25-foot no disturb zone, except activities that are restorative in nature. So it's very hard for the commission.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like no,
can't.
yeah.
What if it were outside the 25? What if it were
It's case by case.
behind
outside
the-
the 25.
yeah, again, just to cite the issue,
Yeah.
between the 25 and 50, we usually don't allow fencing because it's a structure, but again, as Dealing just noted, it's a kind of a case by case basis. So I think understanding a very small lot and those considerations in terms of the very steep drop off, I think this is one of those cases where we can have that discussion in terms of,
Sure.
maybe if the commission feels okay with that between the 25 and 50, maybe there's that opportunity.
Hey, Nathaniel, can you show on with your cursor where would be between the 25 and the 50?
Yeah, so I was just about to suggest maybe one thing the commission could consider is where I have this line that is partially the slope area and then partially the edge of what would be the planting area. That would be fully outside of the 25. Perhaps we could run a fence kind of along this line. That way it'll kind of tie into this fence, which is kind of really the non-property boundary property line fence, just because it's fully on this site, but it could tie in here and run along here. And that way it'll go lawn, fence, and then planting area, and then everything else. So would there be any, given the size, shape of the lot, would that be something that would be approvable?
Yeah, I think the commission could work with something like that.
I would like to know what kind of fence it's going to be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think if it's a light duty fence, I don't think we'd want to
Mhm.
see a lot of big posts back. I don't think you might
Yeah,
not want
no,
either,
I-
So
but
you do something
again,
like a split rail fence,
if you can
is
do
that what the,
Something like that,
Yeah.
or whatever, I mean, if you guys said it should look like X, I'm.
no,
totally
we
fine
don't,
with that.
we
we
don't
wanna see a
take look.
detail on the plan,
Yeah.
something that's just a minimal.
A
fence, like
lighter footprint.
Yeah.
If you
Okay.
will, on the posts and stuff,
Yeah.
that would be appreciated, because
Sure.
again, the 25 to 50, at least in our eyes, is a sensitive area,
Sure.
but we understand the
Yeah.
issues you're
Yeah,
you're
Okay.
Okay, all right.
That detail should show that, being at least 6 inches from the ground too.
Right, allowing
Mhm.
wildlife to.
Yeah.
scoot
Right.
over.
Or something like a post rail fence I described. That's a Carolyn earlier, something like along those lines. Yep.
yeah. Okay,
Okay. All
all
right.
right, and so the plantings would be after the fence, right? Going
Behind,
closer,
Yeah,
right
Yeah.
behind the
plantings
fence.
between
Yeah.
the fence and the river.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So right
Sure.
now, that entire back section, including our neighbors, is
Not
knotweed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have knotweed at my current home. We've been battling it for 4 years. I would say we've got a good chunk of it out, but I mean, if we plant there and our neighbors don't work on the knotweed, you know how it's just gonna fire right back up. Do we just let it do that?
Well, we would encourage you to propose a knotweed removal plan, a stem injection, because the commission doesn't do foliar spray. Stem injection, I don't know how you're doing it on your property, but that's an effective way to
Never
keep
heard of
it.
it, actually.
So it's basically you cut the stem and you inject it with a herbicide.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
quite effective. It does still need repeated treatment. It's not a
Yeah.
one and done. But if you propose that, and that's something the commission could certainly, they encourage invasive
Yeah,
removal.
but so.
I
but if-
understand like the neighbors, I mean,
Yeah.
if you can work with them to say, hey, come to the commission. We like to work with people on these invasive removal.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
But at least it would keep it off your property.
Yeah, cause it goes all the way down,
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
the big old
Or
slope,
get some
yeah.
photographs from this.
Or at a minimum, keep it away from the new plantings that
Yeah.
you're putting
Yeah.
in, so that, why plant and have it overrun?
Yeah.
2 or 3 years later.
Right, at least the mitigation area.
Yeah.
If you,
Mhm.
do that
It-
right,
Yeah.
then
Have a
it-
defensive posture there
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the knotweed.
keep it further down the.
So also right now, we have invasive views back there that are,
They're not invasive.
oh, I thought they were, okay. They are totally interwoven with knotweed.
Yeah.
They're huge and they are old and they are horrifying. Can we remove them or not really?
So you have those proposed for removal.
Yeah,
And, the mitigation area, I think what we would suggest is that you extend that mitigation area out to the property line to account for, just to sort of square it off. It just seems to make a little more sense anyway, but, that could account for removal of
The
those views as well.
okay.
Sorry, did you say mitigation to the property line? Is that what you said?
Yeah, if you
Right.
stretch that across another, I don't know, 8 or 9 feet or.
So
Okay.
there's like,
So that fence is actually not on, is not the property line, that one section of fence that's there, it's.
Which section are you talking about?
There's
Yeah,
fence.
that one,
Ah,
and
I
then
see.
right there, yeah, that one.
Okay,
So yeah, going,
Yeah.
right, so we'd be
Yeah.
then suggesting that you mitigate
Yeah.
outside the fence, but
Yeah.
to your property line.
Okay,
yeah.
So I don't know. if-
So like from the, yeah.
okay.
okay.
Well, I mean, would you
So-
expect like in that whole area, like the plants every like 5 feet on the center in the whole, like down the property line, just because that's like, a few hundred square feet. I mean, would it be acceptable to maybe do the removal and then just plants like up to the slope? I mean, it's like a less than 1-to-1 slope, so maybe planting like up to it and not past it. I just want to know what to put on the plans if we're going to show it all the way to the property line. That's all.
So are you talking about the knotweed removal? I'm sorry, is that?
Yeah. So is it removal and then replanting, or is it just removal to the property
I
line?
think we're talking property
Yeah.
line to the left.
Different property line, Nathaniel. We're not talking about going all
We're
the
not
way
doing
south.
that, so-
No, we're just talking about
Oh,
going
okay.
10 feet to plan left
Yeah.
on the mitigation area.
Right. But to
The
your
plan
point.
left,
Yeah,
you said this
yeah.
There
way.
you go.
That's it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
If
so,
you want to
okay,
do
okay.
If
But
you
it,
would like
it
to
seems
do,
like it is on the other side of their existing stockade fence.
which, are you taking that stockade fence out? The lower one that's in the 25 foot? Is that coming out?
On the side?
Yeah.
There's none in
Yeah.
the,
Yeah, are those coming out?
Where are they
I
staying?
hadn't thought about those. One of them is broken anyway, there's a whole section missing, so
I actually thought that was a property line.
Right,
that's
so
not
you
the
got about
property
10
line?
more feet.
Yeah,
No, so that's what it's showing is you own
Oh,
10 feet on the other side of
Yeah.
that fence.
yeah.
oh, so I would have a longer
Yeah,
area
you'd
if
have
I
a big-
take,
yeah.
and that tree that's there would be my tree then.
Mhm.
The
There
tree's
you
not
go.
shown on the plan.
Oh,
Uh,
it's where the fence broke.
Yeah, but typically, we want fences removed from the 25.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
so,
So we take it out.
okay,
Yeah.
and if you could just put that on the plan,
Yeah.
Nathaniel. And then to your point.
Yep. So,
are
sorry.
you-
Go ahead,
I was just gonna say, so the thing you just said, just put it, so taking the fence out of the 25, that existing fence too, that's what you said?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, all right, continue, sorry about
Do we have to check with the neighbor on that? Cause they have the rest of that back fenced in. I don't know if they have a dog. I don't know what
You
their
should,
situation is.
I would as a courtesy, but
Sure, I saw
it's on
that,
your,
yeah.
it's on your
It's on your
property.
property.
Okay,
You can show them this plan.
okay.
So do you want to propose the invasive removal of the knotweed on your property? Is that something that you'd like to, I mean, we would encourage it, but it's not going to be required as a
If you want to
mitigation.
think about it.
I
Think
would
about
do,
it.
I would do some at the top before the drop off.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
As it starts to drop off, I don't wanna touch any of that, cause it's
Mhm.
hard to get down there and because all the neighbors have so much
Right.
back there, I feel like it's sort of futile, but.
Yeah. So what would be helpful is if you just just sort of show the area of removal on the plan. Is it within the mitigation area? Or is it below that? I guess it's
They're
below
not-
that, isn't it?
Well, it's in also
Here.
all
Goes all the way
woven
down.
into the U's, which is,
Which are coming out and those are.
yeah, U's are
The black,
up higher.
Right, right.
So where are the use on the plan? Julia?
black dots.
Mhm. It's the
They're,
black.
they're not on the,
dots.
they're not on the plan, but it's pretty much like along where the
Where the block,
stroke line
yeah,
is.
big black
Okay,
marks are.
gotcha.
Yeah, so is it okay to take those out?
I would put a note on the plan and explain how you're gonna do it, and I think that's fine.
Yeah.
What do you mean by how you do it? I don't
By
understand.
just removing them.
Well, you have to describe,
How are you gonna remove
It's-
them?
We
they're
don't,
gonna
you
be
bring in a
cut,
big piece of
they're gonna be-
machinery back
right.
to
Oh,
the
yeah.
25
Yeah.
and, getting mucked
it's
up
gonna
that
be
back there.
injected
in
with
the
a,
25. Just-
herbicide of
Mhm.
glyphosate
That's
or
all.
whatever,
The U's are humongous. I don't know,
We're
like,
talking about the knotweed.
oh, I was talking
Right.
about like getting rid of the U's.
How are those coming out?
I don't know, however you get them out,
Yeah.
they're
Okay.
humongous.
You may just want to talk to
Yeah.
Well,
a
that- we'll talk
removal
to Lance.
guy
Yeah.
and he'll give you
Okay.
some
About that, yeah.
kind of how he would approach it.
Yeah.
And then maybe you can
Yeah.
bring that back to the commission
Okay.
saying, here's a letter
So
saying.
can he take a backhoe, a small backhoe?
You know what, I think if, once you talk to someone, they'll give you maybe their methodology. And then if you want to bring that to the commission, we can talk
Oh, I
about it.
see.
Okay,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's all.
okay.
So-
We don't want to prescribe anything,
Yeah.
you might,
Yeah.
there might be better ways of doing it once you talk to some vendors
Okay.
out there.
I actually love this injectable thing for the knotweed. I tried that at our current house.
And another pilot, we are, I hope we're gonna try it this spring, is to do like a mesh grid. A heavy, like, not hardware cloth, but something that's like more than chicken wire, closer than, stronger than chicken wire. You lay it down and the knotweed goes up through it and then it girdles it. So if you get ambitious and want to do something like that on the slope,
Interesting.
let us know.
Hmm.
So Nathaniel, just one last thing on this is,
Yep.
putting the erosion controls behind the knotweed removal and mitigation area.
Yep.
And
Yeah, I was
yew
gonna say that,
removal
yeah.
area.
Now,
Got it.
where would that be?
But
So
behind the
down slope.
plantings and, you know, kind of down slope a little bit.
Yeah, if you're gonna be working
down here.
in a
Okay.
mitigation area with use, you want the
Okay,
erosion control down
Yep.
slope of that.
Yep, no, I get that. Yep.
Roll of the,
Like a straw wattle.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Same thing that we have. Yep.
And
Stay
then just a couple other notes.
Don't roll down
Then
the hill.
Nathaniel got these notes about pheno markers
And
and,
pavers.
yeah, and the
Oh,
yeah.
pavers. There's, I guess, some buried pavers in the lawn that.
So
Yep.
there used to be a shed there and we have a plot plan from Concord,
Mhm.
town of Concord, showing the shed. If we wanted to put another shed in, you can't, even though it was there before and it's on the plan.
Not anymore, I
Yeah.
think.
It,
No.
it probably was not ever permitted.
Again, you're in the 25 and 50, and those are tough zones to.
It
Put
could be,
things in.
it could be placed outside the 50-foot no build zone.
Mhm.
Okay, cause it's over on this side.
No, but
Yeah,
it,
that's
And further
it.
down, it's, yeah,
The 50 is that dotted line above.
that's going through your house.
Goes right through your house.
Oh,
yeah.
I see,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
So
well,
it could be up on the side of your house.
yeah,
Yeah.
the side maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we just take the pavers out, put grass in,
yeah,
whatever,
yeah, that'd be great.
good to go.
Yeah,
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
and then there's some pheno markers requested in the mitigation area.
Right.
Yeah.
So just demarcating at
They're
the
already
edge of
on
the
there.
mitigation area that just basically says mitigation area, you know, do not mow.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Otherwise,
okay,
So
so,
what about the addition? Are we good
Yeah,
with
so the-
addition?
I don't think we have any issues with the addition.
okay, so we have some work to do on the fence and the views and that sort of
sorry,
thing, but he's here for the addition part, so.
Okay,
he's
so you're
to go.
good.
And as far as the addition is concerned, we're just doing a techno post in that corner, no foundation.
Oh, good.
You know, so we're not gonna have a machine down there, just a little machine that
Yeah.
drills a post.
Oh, okay,
And
Good.
that's it, that was easiest.
that's great.
And the retaining walls, you wanna talk about that at all?
I'm glad you're taking that out, right? Retaining wall?
Yes,
That's
Yeah.
good.
yeah, because it's right, that corner of it is almost right where the post is. The post is just right on the edge and I don't wanna,
Oh, yeah.
you know, compromise that post,
Yeah.
so,
It's, yeah, and it has some steps there that are
yeah.
not,
Work and.
Yeah.
no, you wouldn't like walk, you wouldn't use them. And then right next to it is a nice slope down, you just walk down
They can
area.
use.
So that's,
Yeah.
yeah,
So that will be removed.
yeah.
Okay, because the plan says it's gonna be reconstructed.
After talking to the landscaper, you
Yeah.
know, he suggested that we kind of follow the slope on the right-hand
Blend it
side
in,
and
yeah.
just, you know, put some plantings in there and then put a few steps. off the
Nathaniel
slope.
started with that and he said he would change it on the next version.
I'm
Yeah.
good with
Yes.
that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
that's
but
good.
yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I think we're good. Would you like to continue to the next meeting with plan revisions? If, again, those plans would have to be in by a week from Friday.
Yep, that's right.
You
Yep,
good with that?
I'll go with that. I'll go with that. Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
Nathaniel sounds like he's good to go there. So-
Great.
Okay.
Okay,
So look forward to seeing you back on the 20th,
all right.
Great.
Thank you.
All right.
20th?
March 20th.
March 20, got it.
Thanks so
Thank you
much.
so
Have
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
a
Thanks,
nice
everyone.
evening.
Thanks,
Thank you, Nathaniel.
Nice to meet everyone.
Thanks.
Likewise. All right, let's see. Next up is the notice of intent, Minuteman National Historical Park for multiple parcels. DEP file 137-1665. Good evening.
Good evening. We need all those files. Good evening, Bruce Ringwald from Goldsmith Preston Ringwald. I believe in the virtual world, there are several folks out there. I believe Margie Brown is out there from NPS. Rob Schulster from Edward Page and Company, the contractor. And maybe a few others lingering around, just to make sure that I do my job appropriately this
Yeah.
evening.
All right.
So let me just ask, I mean, I can pull these plans up, but is there somebody on the Minuteman project team that would prefer to share plans?
No, I don't think so. And you have the colored ones that I
Mhm.
sent off to you? Good, good. So, as part of this project, this is a design build project that Edward Page and Corporation and GPR are the design build contingency here. Edward Page is also, doing the construction of the boardwalks, or has done the construction of the boardwalks that you folks dealt with a year or so ago.
Okay.
That we were referring to earlier.
Okay, hopefully in good ways.
Yeah.
It came out really nicely from what I've seen.
Yeah.
So this is the whole package of the trail, and underneath us, our Hollywood Squares in the corner is the Old North Bridge section. I have a colleague in Lincoln this evening, Monday night, today's Wednesday. Monday night, we were in Lexington. Lexington has approved their order of condition, approved the hearing that evening, and is in the process of getting together, and probably will be reaching out like you guys did before for a collective order. So hopefully they'll go from there. In a nutshell, before we start looking at the plans, there has been a lot of wear and tear since the last time the bulk of this trail has had any maintenance to speak of. The last real maintenance was 97, when they actually strung the whole trail together. And made all the pieces that we had previously a connection. During that course of time, the vegetation on the sides, as it always does, has got more and more buildup of a sod mat. And so the sod is now higher than the walkway. And so it has held the water into the trail and allowed it to not escape out the sides and create these long discharges. So our watersheds that were going to the edges of the trail are now this much bigger watershed because it's collecting through the trail, and the trail's got foot deep erosion, a couple of feet wide in places. So our proposal and what we're doing is we're coming in and we're proposing to fix the base in many of those areas, and then fix the wearing course as well in those same general areas. And then with that fix, we'll have our trail base above the shoulder. And we'll be cross pitching it, as the thing goes down slope, we'll be cross pitching so that we have water going across the trail, obviously on a vector, but across the trail at an angle versus going down the trail forever till it hits a low spot and it just ponds up and goes over, which is what's been happening. So, I think, in my opinion, it's a win-win, because a lot of the trail where it was 7 feet wide is 10 and 12 feet wide, and where it was 12 feet wide is 15 and 20 feet wide. And we're gonna be bringing the trails back into the proper width, removing all this loose sediment from the site entirely, and bringing in new materials and putting it in, and then top dressing the side slopes. We'll be using native seed grass mixes for shade mix and sunny mix where we can use them, and where we can't, where we're in the woods, or where we could, but it's a useless adventure. In the woods, we'll be using an organic mulch, a lot of leaf litter compost, and putting that back in on the sides so that we have everything stabilized and throughout. We'll be doing that throughout the whole area, not just the sections that are in your jurisdiction. So having said that, if Delia, you're on the first section, I think, perfect. Oh, she's on the Old North Bridge. Okay, so on the Old North Bridge, in here, the trail, if you've been out there at all recently, has gotten very, very wide. And especially when you hit the two monument areas, they're much, much larger than what they want. We had talked about how to reduce it down into what area, and after meeting with Margie's group and a number of the rangers and the parks people, for how much space they need, we're able to still reduce that impervious area substantially in those areas. We're going to be adding a cobble edge. They started it with, I think, the Appalachian Mountain Club crew. They had done some cobbled edges in places and had good success with it. So we're going to be using cobbled edge in and around the monument areas to kind of define the trail. We're going to be moving the benches a little bit and putting them in We'll be cleaning out the catch basins. There's actually 2 catch basins down there that are full up with sediment. There's actually 2 out at the road, if you can believe it or not. You can see them if you kick everything away, but they are full of sediment to the brim.
Wow.
So we'll be cleaning all of that stuff up, and working that through. Now, once we cross over the bridge and you start down this next section, and this is where a lot of probably the most work is going to occur. Once you cross over the bridge and go on down, if you've walked that section that goes underwater, was underwater a good part of the winter, it may still be now, I don't know, I haven't been out there in about a month. But that section is, we're gonna be pulling out the base, and we're gonna be putting in a whole new base and through there. And then the whole new wearing course on top, because it's problematic right now. It's very, very spongy, and it's a problem. That section is entirely within floodplain. The colored pieces that you see in the corner on the plan up here are the pre and post, and they're in the center is an incremental flood storage summary. We are, with the work that we're doing, we will have actually more flood storage. Not that it's really that much, but we're not going the other way, which is the important thing. We're not taking any flood storage away. We're actually creating a little bit more. For when there's not flood waters, we've got a depressed area along the side to allow for the water to settle and recharge into the ground and not just be an overland flow to the edge of the wetlands. That particular area, the wetlands are right up to the edge of the trail. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's right there. And there are a number of sections that occurs, and you know, we didn't have wetland protection in 1775, and they marched through where they needed to march through. So we're dealing with what we have, and we're trying to make it a much better situation. If you don't mind, if we can go through the sections and then come back with any questions, so.
Well, a quick question. You mentioned something about impermeable surface on the stretch between Monument Street and the bridge. Did you say impermeable?
I don't believe.
I hope not. That's what I heard.
No,
Okay, good.
That's all gravel.
All right, okay, good.
Well, gravel base and then a wearing course.
And yes, crushed
When
stone.
are you planning to do this section by North Bridge?
The actual timing for when the different sections happen is gonna be dependent upon all the activities that happen. Like in the spring, there's so much going on, you know, between Patriots Day and.
Well, I'm thinking it's 2025.
Well, all this has to happen this
Before
summer
then.
work season.
Okay, good.
That is our plan. All this to be done by the end, so that in the spring of 2025, it's all done and it looks beautiful.
Great.
And everything is in good shape.
Yeah,
So that's why we're trying to get through all the commissions so that we can put together.
Yeah,
schedules,
no, that'd
'cause
be awesome.
our problem has been to work on trail sections that are upland, and then we'd have to travel over them to get to the wetland sections and then come back and repair those sections. It didn't make a lot of sense. So we're trying to do it methodically through the whole thing.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, let me see, where have we moved to? So I'm lost on this screen. I can't tell where I'm at. Should be at Miriam's corner, am I?
I think I might have skipped ahead a little bit. No,
That's the bridge.
yeah.
It's the bridge, so let's go up to the next page. Yes, here we go. Now it's.
Oh, Miriam's, yes, there's the parking area.
There's the parking area for Miriam's corner, so
Yeah.
you can pull that down just a whisker.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's close. So what you don't see in the corner is from the rest station over in the corner and the information station right around the corner on Merriam Street. And this section right through here, there you go.
Yeah.
That section comes through,
It
so
moves very slowly.
that's all right.
Big plan set.
It is a very big plan set, and you only got 1/3 of it. So this section of the trailer comes through here, it starts in the buffer zone, comes out of the buffer zone, comes back in, and then along the side of Lexington Road, around the back of the parking lot, and then we head into the field. There is a little piece of this that is in the flood boundary as well, and there's a flood calculation on that also. And same thing as the other site, we're gonna create just a little bit more flood storage, not a lot, but we're not going the wrong direction. We're doing it in the appropriate manner. So from here, we cross over and we're into the field,
Mhm.
and we're around we were around the back of the field. Yep, okay.
Just come over the bridge here.
Yep,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we go over the bridge and then we're coming down around the back of the field. So that whole side is literally right up against the edge of the wetlands.
Yeah.
The wetland flags were
wet.
hanging. Brian was in here before. Oxbow's office did all our delineation on here. And then, you know, so we're right against the edge there. We have erosion control proposed against the edge, using wattles and staked in your manner. And then it comes out of there, and you can see that we've got a little bit of grading that happens right in the center. This section, some of the trail, the organics have kind of closed in on the trail, so instead of the trail being 7 feet wide, it's about 4 feet wide. So we're gonna be pushing it back out to its original width. And then again, grading it so that it has that nice little cross pitch, to go across through there. I think in that location, there is an existing culvert that we're gonna clean up and replace in there. If you wanna move on down to the next section, we're gonna kind of go along. Oops. Going along the edge of the field, and then we head into the woods.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
And there's another farm field on the back.
Yep.
And we're right up against the edge of that as we come along through there. And then we come up around and come out of the buffer and back into the buffer again, where we get next to, we're approaching the fields. You go to the next sheet.
Yep.
We're approaching the fields in the back of, I think it's the Scott House.
And you go down to where the pigs were.
There you go. So, yeah, coming
This is
up
one of
in,
my walks. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I was saying, this is one of my walks. I live very near here, so I was just saying, you were coming down to the pigs next.
Yeah,
Where the
where the
pigs
pigs
were.
used to be,
Yeah.
yes,
I
exactly.
miss the pigs.
They're just off to the right of that last
Yeah.
L that you see there
Yep,
coming
yep.
down. That's where they were at. So in through here, there's a couple existing culverts that cross. We're gonna be checking them and making sure that they're clear and clean. And they're outside the buffer. They're basically taking the drainage from the farm field and discharging them to the downside. If you walk it all the time, you
Yeah.
know there's quite a slope down to the next field below
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
So as we come to the next section. Glad you're doing this. I'm sorry, Julie, I owe you on that one.
You got the boardwalk.
All right, so that's good, because that brings us around. So now this is where the pigs used to be.
Yeah.
In the wetlands there. They were in the wetlands there before. And in this section in here, there's a couple trees that exist along the edge. We'll have tree protection around those. And then we come on up along. This is where they were doing the staging for the first board, the second boardwalk, the
Yeah.
first one we just went by.
Yeah.
Second major boardwalk revisions, just around the corner. So they'll be doing some staging out in that same area again for this work. And this is where they come in, and we'll get to that page later on. But that's gonna be, just taking care of that area. And as you go forward, you're doing right. You're faster than me, that's good. This comes on down, and then you can see where the single line is, that's the boardwalk. So in this particular area, there is a low spot that we're addressing. There's several places where social trails have occurred.
Yeah.
We're trying to clean those up and make it so the social trails don't go, but raise those low spots so they don't become water, which created the social trail in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's part of what's proposed here. Once we cross on the other side of the boardwalk, there is a lot of gradient that comes on
Yes,
down to this
yes,
area.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite steep, and as it comes on down here, you can see by the contours, it's steep, and then also the angle of the contours, we're cross pitching it as much as we can. To pitch it across, we have a whole series of leak offs, is a term that the National Park System uses, but it's essentially, you have an area where there's a break in the organics, there's no stone wall, or there's a gap in the stone wall where the water can just disappear. So rather than keeping it trapped in the trail, the way it has been, there's a number of places where it's gonna leak off and go off the trail and into the woods. So that it doesn't all come on down to the ends. As
yeah.
Delia and Bert can attest, there was a fair amount of erosion of sediment down to those areas that they had to clear out when they put in the boardwalk. Moving on to the next section, if you would. So where am I now? So we've come up from the walk.
Shady side.
And this is, yeah, Shady Side where the new section of trail has just been put in. I don't think it has the wearing course on it yet, but everything else is there. And then that'll be connecting on through, we'll be in the buffer, we'll be picking up right where the new trail hits the old trail. And that's where we pick up here, and we'll have erosion control again along that edge of the wetland edge, along through there. Again, cross pitching throughout that whole area. And then, now we're getting down to, where there's another parking area and a trail coming down in, on the upper part. That's all right. You rolled by it. It's outside the buffer. Keep me moving. And then we get along to, the entrance to the Elm Brook, boardwalk. And that slope coming down now as you go around the existing building and that corner leading down to there. It's probably 25, 30 feet wide right now. There was a tree that fell over that's since been removed and stumped out. The social trail over the years has cut the corner. We're gonna be reestablishing the trail back the way it should be, because if you came around the corner where everybody walks right now, the wayside sign's about 30 feet to your right. And the trail's supposed to be right over there by the wayside sign, so we're gonna be bringing the trail back over there, which will lessen the gradient, because it's the longer distance versus the hypotenuse. And it will help with the grade coming through there. We'll be pitching the water from one side to one side portion and the other as it goes through to get rid of the water in the various areas, so that it's not all running down. And this is where the most sediment had collected on a boardwalk. I think they had to brush off probably about the first 30 feet of the boardwalk when they were in there of the sediment to take the old one out. So those are the areas. And if you go a couple more sheets, Delia, let's kind of go over the details real quickly. If you don't mind.
Would you have to close everything down while you're doing it?
Yeah, we had sections closed for the boardwalk.
I know, yeah.
And we'll be doing that again. The signs will be there, and it's gonna change your walk and a lot of people's walks from time to time.
Yeah.
But, so we gotta go, I'm basically taking you to the last sheet if you could. Yeah, right there, perfect. So these are, staging areas. The first staging area is at Merriam Corner. If you go down to the bubbles, they work better. They're where you were, right there. So the first staging area is Merriam's Corner. We'll have erosion control around it, obviously. It will be some storage of equipment and then the workers' vehicles. Most of the material will be loaded and hauled right out or unloaded and put into place as we're going through. There won't really be stockpiles around too much material, because we hope to be just putting it right into place. The staging area B is, I believe at the Scott House, and then staging area C is,
Shady Side.
yeah, Shady Side again. And then if you go to the next page, the first one, I can't read it from here, but I believe that's at, what do I call it? Just we're doing some tree work there. There's a house right there. It's right on the side of the road. It's just up from the intersection of Lexington and,
2A.
North Road. Yeah, 2A. That's the first one. The second one is, E is,
Hartwell.
yeah, at Hartwell, up at Hartwell, and we'll be using that lower parking lot there at Hartwell. And we'll be working the trail on down, but now I'm into Lexington, so we don't have to go that far. Hartwell's in Lexington.
So there was a comment, that is one of the staging areas.
Yeah,
think you noted was-
GC 92.
in the BBW or
9.2.
in the notice of disturb zone, excuse me. It says on sheet C9-2.
That would probably be up
The one
one
in
sheet.
Marion's corner.
Ah, okay,
Okay.
thank you, Bert.
Yeah, so right here,
Yeah, so I guess the question is, can you get that out of the no disturb zone?
what out of
The state, I think the comment was some of that staging
Well,
areas within the no
behind
disturb
net.
zone.
Oh, I think it's
Your
over behind the
staging area,
house.
yeah.
Yeah, if you scroll down just a little, it's hidden. in there.
Behind there, somewhere.
Yep.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Okay.
Move 'em.
Thanks, Nick.
Sorry, Nick. So the staging area up there, does it intrude into the 20?
Oh, I see what you're looking at. Yeah, we can definitely pull that up above there.
That'd be great.
That,
Thank you.
that won't be a problem.
Good.
I'll make note of that, definitely.
So it's fair to say, Delia, the floodplain calcs are still being looked at by CPW?
Yes.
Okay. You're good with the overview?
I am.
All right, thank
Up
you for
for any
that.
questions.
Very, very helpful. Got us all oriented correctly now. Any other comments from the
No,
commission?
seems good.
Yeah, it seems like a great
Yeah, it
project.
does.
Seems
Yeah,
like, you
And
know,
necessary.
27 years later, you're
Yeah.
coming in and cleaning it all up.
Well,
That sounds like it's time.
Just in time for
Yeah.
the 250. I
hopefully
suppose.
we don't wait till the 25th for the next round.
Yeah,
that's right.
275 or
I
whatever.
do have a question though. So if you're doing it through this summer, the areas that you're gonna seed at the sides.
Yeah.
So I guess you'll seed in the fall. And then-
Yeah, we'll probably be seeding in a number of different times.
Yeah.
And have straw down, cause we're gonna, as soon as we have an area done, we're gonna wanna seed it. Whether they come through and do watering on it, or we just
Okay.
count on some mulch and hope for not as wet of a summer as we had last summer, but
Yeah.
not a drought that we had. a few
But it'll be
years
kind
back.
of obvious by then, won't it, where not to walk? I guess I was just thinking about.
Oh, there's a lot of places that, especially like in the Old North Bridge area where. I forget what they call it, but they have the iron rods that come up with a loop and they run the rope
Yeah,
down
yeah,
through.
yeah.
We're gonna be doing, there's
Okay.
gonna be a bunch of that in a
Okay.
bunch of places that will probably be permanent to
Okay.
try to control
Mm.
the spread
Yeah.
that has
That's what I was
occurred.
thinking, okay.
Yeah.
I just have one question. So you said in the woodlands, you're gonna use that compost mulch, but you're not planning to seed it. So,
Yeah, there's some areas that right now, there's a lot of, there's either moss and just leaf litter
Yeah.
that's in there to try to grow grass in
so
those
can you
areas.
just look at, like, you know, there's native seed mixes that are shade tolerant?
Yep.
Just to look at that and see if that's something that,
Yeah, we do have one that we're proposed using, and we can add it in with that,
I
so
think
that
that
we
would be
get a little
helpful.
bit of root
Yeah.
action to happen.
right.
Yeah, we can do that.
It's very dry in there, would it, I suppose, you never know, the odd one might, yeah.
Right. You know, there are, you know, I'm trying to, wood rush. I think is a lot of that. I think it's wood rush. I can't remember now, but it's a sort of a floppy grass that you see in a lot of dry woodlands.
Mm. Oh, it's gonna be great.
All right. So go to the public. Any public comment regarding this application? Okay. So good, continuing to the 20th. Would that be good for you and your team?
What would you like us to be bringing into?
I think the only thing is just if you could make a change to the plan to move that little piece out of the,
okay.
you know, those little,
Minor-
those minor changes really, right?
Okay.
Just noting the shade tolerant grass and
Yep.
woodlands where it
You know,
seems.
otherwise
feasible.
it's a great project, right? Obviously.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
we're waiting for the CPW to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Show me. That's it.
But if you could get those to us a week from this coming Friday,
Mhm.
Not a problem.
and if they're just little tweaks, any
Yeah, does he need?
Any
be here on
need
the
to
20th?
come back on the 20th? I wouldn't think so. If everything's copacetic with CPW, I think we'd be ready to just issue an order
If,
then.
if they tell me that I'm okay beforehand, I won't come.
Okay. That's probably,
Although I may have
that's
to for
probably the
another.
right way to say it, right?
I think I might be there anyhow, because I don't have a DEP number and I got a couple things I gotta do on the next project. So,
Okay,
Yeah.
well, thank you.
okay.
Really
Okay.
appreciate it.
Next.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Next.
all right, going for the finish line.
Good evening.
All
My
right,
name's Bruce Ringwald from GPR.
and we're here to talk about the notice of intent for 287 Lindsay Pond Road, DP file number 137 TBD, right?
Yes,
All right.
EBD is an issue, so, I'm gonna let you run that one too, if you would be so kind. And we'll start with this plan, it's a good place to start, so we're, at 287 Lindsay Pond Road. This is a property that has an existing house on it. Which, if I can get up and, let me just show you, it's kind of, the existing house is right here. And it's right down to the edge and exists on up. So this existing house, is being proposed to be removed. There was a septic system right in this general area that was before you, the end of 21, I think you issued an order of conditions in the first part of 22 for it, if memory serves me right. And the system was installed in the fall of 22 and got a certificate of compliance from the Concom and from the Board of Health and eventually from you folks as well. They wish to, the owners wish to build a new property here for their mother-in-law and also a ADU, a guest house. And the septic system is right on the edge of being big enough, and so let's avoid any questions. Let's put in a new septic system that works appropriately. We've got the same footprint. I'm not sure why it was a trapezoid before, but we squared it off. We kept it the same distance from the wetlands, and it's basically going right back in the same place. We will be using probably 6 of the piping material over again because it's had such limited use and it's a Presby system. I'm certain that majority of the lines have not seen an ounce of effluent. So our design is already in with the Board of Health for review. It's done in a slightly different changes than the previous one. We don't like to have such a long feed off of one service, so we have multiple services from the distribution box into the system, so the effluent spread around on a more even basis. So the system is part of this application. And then the removal of the house and the proposal of the new one. The existing house is 30 point something feet, I can't remember what it says on the plan, away from the wetland, and the proposed house is the same. We are actually 12 feet less disturbance within the 25 to 50 foot zone of impervious area than what's current. We do increase our impervious coverage 50 to 75 and 75 to 100. We have, with the design of the primary system as a larger system, we have to do a reserve system as well, whereas this one went in before it was just a repair. So you don't have to do a reserve. So we have a reserve system, and I'll show it on another page, but it's basically sits in this area here. And we've pulled this drainage around just a little bit. And it's on a page that's gonna come up in a second. Those things are kind of holding the building, the proposed new building in the same general footprint area as where the current house is. As well, the owners are adamant about keeping the house in the same general area as the primary house. They purchased this property because of the views of the meadow to the pond and maintaining that so that no one would do any disturbance to that type of view situation. And the reason that you see a gap between the main portion of the house and the garage, the 1-car garage, is a little portico where they can park a car out of shelter, but it won't have front and rear walls on it, is to allow for the ADU to have view through there to the meadow in the pond area, from where it's at. And we have done a gazillion iterations between the architect, the landscape architect, and ourselves with property owners to come up with the best fit that we could get on here, keeping in mind everybody's regulations and setbacks all the way around. We have the ADU snugged right up against the property line setback. We have the septic system. There's exactly 20 feet off to both the ADU and to the new house, which is the minimum allowed from a basement to a septic system. They're all set right into spaces in there. So that kind of is sandwiched us into that same space. The angle is twisted a little bit and it allows for a better viewing of the pond. Uh-oh.
It's okay.
Thunder button. There you go. Good. So that's kind of the reasoning for there. As I say, we haven't gotten any closer. We had initially, Lily, Elizabeth Moore, who you folks have had before you a bunch before, and I've worked on a couple different projects. The berm that's along Lindsay Pond Road has a few pines in it and a lot of invasive. There's just full of invasive through there. And so as you can see here on this plan, we were proposed to expand that berm out a little bit and add a lot of plants to replace that invasive. What we didn't do is do enough plantings in the 50 to 100-foot zone. So we will be coming back to you with some more plantings in that area. We will hopefully have them as low plantings, more ground cover type and planting areas that aren't that high so that we're not interfering with the view from the property across the street to the pond and across the meadow that they like so much. They have historically, it has been mowed where it's shown as green and allowed to be as meadow and only really mowed once or twice a year where you see the brown or the darker green across on the other side there. That's what has been occurring. It shows a tree line down along the bottom there, close to the wetlands at the end of the house. It's not really trees there. That's all kind of brush and woody shrub material through there. And we're planning to maintain all of that right there. There, where the tree is shown right off that lower corner of the house, right there, thank you, is a Coosa dogwood. That existing one will be removed and we'll be replacing it with another similar type tree, but more native than the Coosa. So I do need to get you some more plantings on this. I also need to get a DEP number for you on this. I had a few other notes of things I had. I have to have a chart for you. I sent one over late this afternoon that I thought was in the NOI package, but it wasn't. That shows that there is less disturbance in the 50-foot zone. And then there is more disturbance in the 50 to 100. And that is the area that we need to come up with some better mitigation for. One of the questions I need to have my brain refreshed is in that mitigation. I know in the past we've done plantings. I need to be refreshed on what type of plantings equal what in that 1-to-1 ratio that I'm.
You
working
mean
with.
spacing?
Not so much spacing as, is it by plant or is it just square footage of coverage?
The square footage of coverage and then shrubs are 5 foot on center.
Yeah.
And
okay.
trees are 10 foot on center.
Okay.
And herbaceous is 1 foot on center. So can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
So what is this line here? What does that mean? This is not
That
a
was the
property
line
is it?
between where it has been historically mowed.
Oh, that's, okay, so you say
And
this
and
there.
that area is the area that's been historically mowed, just to keep the woody product out.
Right.
So, I mean, something else the commission might want to think about is, you know, so here's the wetlands boundary here. This is an area that is mowed, all of this is mowed.
No, not over
This
to
is
that,
not
the whole
green-
thing is mowed, but the brown portion is from that dotted line, that line there, everything to the right of that is like a couple times a year, probably once in the spring and once in the fall. And then everything to the left of it's mowed.
So into the no disturb zone, right to the pond?
It's what's
Into
been,
the wetlands.
no, it's right to the edge of the wetland.
Into the
It's a
wetlands.
meadow wetland right there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's
so
what's
here's the
been
wetland
occurring
boundary.
for
Yeah.
forever.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, I mean, one potential mitigation is to have, you know, everything that's in the 25-foot no disturb zone, have that be like a, you know, maybe, I don't know, but some, at least in the wetlands, you know, that's an annual mow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that you get some more
Growth.
meadow,
Yeah.
growth in
Over the
there rather
season.
than
Yeah.
grass.
100%, and that's kind of you can see in the grass that's
Yeah.
out there, the difference between the
Yeah.
grasses,
Mhm.
because they have been doing that, you know.
Right.
But if you wanna extend that out to like the, as you suggested,
It's
25 foot,
just an idea.
that's an idea that we definitely up for discussion about for sure.
So, go ahead, Bill. please.
So Bruce, the whole house is being rebuilt, right?
The entire house is being rebuilt.
So why not bring it back? So it's out of the 50-foot, no build zone?
Well,
I mean, wouldn't that make the most sense, just to move?
And I would also just, along that same line of thinking, Bill,
Yeah,
and again, I don't have the experience. Most of the, I think all the projects I've ever seen are similar to the small house we saw earlier.
right.
Where, okay, the house is 35 feet away. And they're adding in this case, a small addition, which is no closer than. But I don't have an experience where the whole house has been torn down. And then kind of claiming grandfathering of that location.
Hmm.
And I'm just not sure.
Right, so, I mean,
It seems odd to me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
there's nothing there anymore.
Basement, or is it just?
it
There
has a
is.
basement.
But the basement's gonna be reconfigured.
Yes.
You're not gonna land on that same foundation.
No, we're not gonna land on
That's
the
all.
same
Yeah,
foundation,
that's-
100%.
that's the
New
question.
foundation.
Right, so, you know, understanding that it is a grandfathered condition, you know, but the way that these projects have been approached in the past, if there's, you know, if there's the ability to move it out, that would be at least considered. And what if, just to maintain the views and everything else, what if this were pulled back? You know, so that, you know, this portion is outside.
If that happens, we get too close between that house and the ADU. Cause you pinch in, as you pull this back,
Yeah.
this space pinches right into
Sure.
nothing.
Yeah.
And there's no space there.
Yeah.
You can't get through, this roof touches this roof type scenario. Doesn't
Well,
look
well,
right.
it's an L, you could actually just pull that one portion back, not exactly, as opposed to the whole house, right?
And then these views get lost.
Or you can
coming
push
across.
out even on the side where, I can't see what that is is that a patio?
But this here,
Yeah,
that's a patio.
why couldn't you push, that's outside of the 50,
Yes.
yeah. So there's some other configurations that could be done outside the 50, if one really was committed to do it, you could get as much space, it looks to me.
So I can't come back this way. If you go to the,
So I think maybe
CDHD.
rather than trying to design
Yeah,
it
yeah,
next
I would
year,
do it.
I think what would be helpful is just to come back with some iterations and.
well, that's why I want to show you that.
That's okay,
other sheet,
yeah.
Because there's the drainage that comes across from here offsets from the septic system.
Which plan are you?
Same one,
asking to look
same
at?
one.
No,
Yeah, what
the,
plan?
the,
Landscape?
Planting plan? Yeah. the
No.
landscape.
the one that I brought in is I brought in an additional sheet, a week and a half ago.
I just have your colored plans that you sent for presentation.
So there's another sheet that I submitted and this reserve septic system that we have to do because it's new construction now is here.
Mhm.
And then there's the drainage, there's offset to the drainage. This drainage is pulled to right to here now because it had to meet that offset and that's on that other plan. To move this out here, it doesn't leave space for the septic.
Just a
And
matter
it
of.
I think
totally
you're right.
blocked
We
this
can't,
space
we
here.
can't
Yeah,
be
I mean,
arguing, you know,
right, it's-
or divising the household, you know. that's-
Right, I mean, I think what would be helpful is just to, you know, you said you've gone through a lot of iterations. And just to submit those so that, you know, the board can see what those look like. Hopefully some of those iterations are, you know, considering moving that out of the 50, or if there's, you know, things that are precluding that ability to do that. Having a little bit more of a, you know,
More
an
comfortable.
understanding of
Yeah.
why that can't occur.
Okay,
And so just so I'm clear, just so I learned from tonight, if you were to tear down a structure completely, that maintenance of that setback from the wetlands is still valid as a grandfathered
Grandfather,
condition.
it is
It is
grandfather.
grandfathered.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know.
So the way that, right, so, you know, that closest point still is maintained, like, remember the project on, was it Ridge Road? Where they, Ridgeway. Where they did a demo. And they wanted to construct closer, and the commission said, that's your hard line, you
Hmm.
can't, and it was a small site, there was definitely no ability, but they were expanding the size of the house.
Mhm.
So they had to maintain that
Okay,
limit of the encroachment, but
Okay.
where there's been prior projects where. You know, it's in, you know, activities within the 25 or within the 50, there's, you know, the request.
Oh, I
You
see,
know,
yeah, okay.
understanding that it's grandfathered, but hey,
Okay.
you know, you have the opportunity. You know,
So-
to meet the setback at this time, if it's a full, you know, a full.
Re-
You may not be able to, but there's gotta be an alternatives analysis. that
so I'll
demonstrates
bring in
that.
some of these alternatives
That's right.
and we
That's-
can talk
that's
about
what
them.
I-
Yeah.
Right.
They, homeowners are very adamant about trying to hold this position and
I think you need to just demonstrate that for
Yep.
the next meeting.
Will do.
So, you know, I understand that, but there's regulations
Yeah.
that the commission has to implement consistently amongst every applicant that comes in front of them.
Yep.
I know you understand.
I
Thank you.
totally understand.
just the last couple of quick points, stormwater structure within the no-build zone?
So there has to be an existing one somewhere right now that I just don't know where it is. But there's a basement in the existing building and there would be a basement in both of these buildings. And I need to get the drainage over, and I brought the drainage over to the point where, and it's on the other plan that is
Yeah, it's
shown,
not on
but
this plan.
one comes right to the 50
Right.
foot. And the
one's-
other comes just
over.
past it into this zone,
Okay.
in here, it doesn't get to the 25, but it goes past it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because I gotta get to daylight, and I can't even get to daylight with the one that goes past it. So I'm going in and I put in a 2x2x2 area of, crushed stone of trap rock. So that the pipe level is down here. And it would fill up with water if it didn't absorb into the ground, and it's very sandy soil here, so mostly it's gonna absorb in the ground, but if by chance we had crazy rains and that thing filled up, it would just have a 2 foot wide level spreader to overtop over the vegetation towards the wetlands on that. This
So-
is groundwater discharge and or roof water
Yeah,
discharge, which is clean.
You can't still pull it back though out of the?
No, so the grades,
So I think.
we've pushed it as far up as we can to get it with the grade as far away. Going the other way, I have the septic system in the way, but if I went that way, I'd be like right next to the wetland to get to that grade.
Well, I think perhaps maybe we just see it more detail.
Definitely, I will definitely have
We're
it more
talking
detail. for you.
abstractly about it, but,
Yeah,
you know,
We do have a plan, but it's not on the colored set that was
Yeah.
provided for
Okay.
presentation, but
I will get
I
it
think it would
all
be
in
help-
one plan.
that's fine. But it would be helpful to also have that be part of the narrative, you know, it is in the 50. You're requesting a waiver for that.
Yep.
Providing the mitigation and then alternatives, like why can't that be? You know,
Yep.
and I think that's legitimate.
Yeah.
Completely that, you know, that's where it daylights, you know, just according to grade. But, you know, are there other options?
Yep.
That you know, I mean,
You never wanna rely upon a pump for your drainage. You always want a daylight, you know.
you don't have to.
If you don't have to. A lot
Yeah.
of older homes, we have to use pumps.
Right.
But, you know, existing, it doesn't have it, you don't wanna do it if you don't have to.
Okay, and you had mentioned you're working on the table, et cetera, so.
Yep, I got all those other things and I'll have a revised set of plans before next Friday so that.
Great, we'll see you back on the 20th.
We'll be back on the 20th.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, have a good evening.
Yep, you too. All right. I think that closes that out. Oh, yes, thank you. Public
There was a hand.
public comment on this 287 Lindsay Pond application?
Yes.
We can't hear you.
You're muted, sir.
I don't think you are muted.
Huh?
All right, George Jacob She on Lindsay, on Old Farm Road. We live across the street and we wish Gail and Matt good luck with that project. We're going to be selling our house fairly soon. And so, we'll be having people come up and look at it and so forth. And I was just hoping that we could count on there not being construction vehicle traffic or parking on Old Farm Road as a result of this project.
There shouldn't be parking on public roadways of the construction vehicles. Those should be on site.
Agreed. We'll make note of that. And I'll speak with the contractors.
Thanks for the comment. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
I don't see any.
Okay. Now we're
Okay.
Thank
We're
you
good?
very much. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you for the comment again.
You bet.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to other business. We are back amending the Warner's Pond Task Force.
Again.
Delia, how can you do this to us?
I'm so sorry. It's a very minor change.
No such thing.
So this is the 8th iteration of the Warner's
Oh.
Pond charge, and this is only to note that the Juro Park is under the care and custody of the Select Board and maintained for recreational purposes. It is not under the custody of the Recreation.
Okay,
Commission. That's
all
it.
right. Would someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the amendment, the revised version.
Second, any public comment?
Fine.
Oh, and before we vote, any public comment? Seeing none?
Second.
Thank you, Sarah, and we'll take the vote. Sarah?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
I am an aye as well, and we are adjourned.